ఇదేమిటి?
ఇదే ఇప్పుడు ల్యాప్టాప్ బయట
ఏ ల్యాప్టాప్? ఏది మనది?
ఓకే.
సిసిఐటి వాళ్ళ. అదే ఇక్కడ ఉందా?
ఓకే
సిసిఐటి కాదు.
సిసిఐడి కాదే
ఈ ఆల్ఫా సిసిఐటి వాళ్ళ. చేతితో పెట్టుకున్నాను.
ప్రెజెంటేషన్ టూ ప్రెజెంటేషన్ మీరే చెప్పండి.
నేను కదా ఆయన ఇచ్చారు కీ నోట్ ఒకటి ప్రెజెంటేషన్ ప్రెజెంటేషన్ ఒకటి
ప్రెజెంటేషన్ ఇప్పుడు మన
కీ నోట్ అంటే ఫస్ట్ ఇచ్చాను కదా.
ఐడియా ఉంది కీనోట్ ఫస్ట్ లాస్ట్ ఇచ్చింది కీనోట్ ఫస్ట్ ఇచ్చింది ప్రెజెంటేషన్
కాదు, నేను అదే చెప్పాను నేను.
ఒక్క నిమిషం ఇగో బిట్స్ హైదరాబాద్
బిట్స్ హైదరాబాద్ కీ నోట్.
ఓకే
రాసుకుని రాసుకో అన్నాను నేను ఇందాకే చెప్పాను.
Have to rename good.
బిట్స్ హైదరాబాద్
కీనోట్ రాసుకున్నాం
అది బిట్స్ హైదరాబాద్. క్లోజ్ చేయాలి.
you can't చేంజ్ అవుతలేదు
It is that.
yeah he gave me some other something
Sorry, it is that. It is yes. Hello. As a fish. Yeah, I'm also there.
ఫస్ట్ కీనోట్
తర్వాత ఆన్లైన్
ఈ నోట్స్ తర్వాత
ఈ తర్వాత
ఈ తర్వాత
ఏమున్నా
ఇది ఒకటి హ్యాండ్ బ్యాగ్ ఒకటి
ఇక్కడ పిక్ అవుతుంది కనెక్షన్
తగ్గేది
హలో 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 ఇక్కడ మైక్స్ ఏ వాన్లో ఉన్నాయి
ఐడియా లేదు
ఇది పిక్ చేస్తుందమ్మా హలో హలో
ఇప్పుడు రాలే.
హలో స్పీకరు ప్లే చేయండి ఏదన్నా
వీడియోనా?
యూట్యూబ్ ఆన్ చేసి
యూట్యూబ్
ఇది ఇంకో మైక్ పిక్ చేస్తుంది.
స్క్రీన్ అక్కడ ప్లే అలా
ఇంకో మైక్ ఏది పిక్ చేస్తుంది?
దీంట్లో మనం పిక్చర్స్ ల్యాప్టాప్
వాయిసే వస్తుంది.
నాయిస్ డిస్టర్బెన్స్.
మాట్లాడండి, వినపడుతుంది. ఎక్కడి నుంచి వస్తుంది? దాంట్లో కెమెరా మైక్ 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 ఆఫ్
వస్తుందా సార్ ఇంకా?
పిక్ చేస్తుంది. ఎక్కడ నుంచి పిక్ చేస్తుంది?
అది
ఆయన రమ్మన్నారు సార్ ఫస్ట్ పార్సల్ ఏమైనా చేశాడా? అదే పార్సల్ మీకు ఏమైనా ఇష్టం?
ఇది ఆఫ్ సార్.
నాపే ఉంది డౌన్ ఆఫ్
వేరే వస్తుందా?
ఆ స్లైడ్ వీళ్ళకి ఇదే ఉంటుంది. మైక్ ఏది పిక్ చేస్తున్నాను.
సతీష్ ఫోటో
Sir, you play Hyderabad campus video. Some videos you can play. Let's stay for that cover. Let's talk about some. People can support it from the
So we've done this. I will take care. Oh, it's good. Hello.
So a very good one and all. We welcome you all. We welcome all the distinguished guests, respected faculty members, researchers, industry experts, and dear participants to the second day of the IEEE Census Council Middle School unprinted sensors for a smarter, healthier, and connected industrial world. We sincerely thank you for your enthusiastic participation on day one. Today, we continue this journey of learning with keynote lectures, technical talks, and hands-on sessions. I request Director Sir to give a very token of appreciation to Dr. Prakash Chauhan. I now request Professor Konanaku to give an introduction to Dr. Prakash Chauhan.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great honor and privilege to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Prakash Chauhan, Director of the National Remote Sensing Center, ISRO, Hyderabad. Dr. Chauhan has made remarkable contributions to remote sensing, Earth observation, and missions, including Chandrayaan. His work has significantly advanced the applications of space technology in science and society. He has won numerous awards like the Asia Pacific Regional Excellence in Space Award 2023, ISRO Merit Award by ISRO in 2010, Satish Dhawan Award by ISRO Space Mission. He also has published more than 150 peer-reviewed papers in national and international journals. We are truly privileged to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Prakash Chauhan for the keynote address.
One minute, 1 minute.
Okay, good morning to you all. First and foremost, let me thank this Hyderabad for giving me invitation live situation to your mobile phones, etc., using some kind of a ground-based communication. So, their everyday life you are using a satellite technology for positioning itself. These services are called positional service. A pizza, when it is ordered by you on an app, it reaches from that pizza factory by the help of this GPS satellite only. Otherwise, it will not reach. That boy will not be able to come to your house. This is a typical example of space technology application. Another example, if I have to say, that many of you may be drawing your money from ATMs. Now, these ATMs are in remote areas also. And some of them are in rural areas, far from places. Even if there is no, tower is coming or no communication, mobile communication is there, even there at certain locations you can withdraw money. So, if you go next time to an ATM station, carefully see there is a small dish antenna over a ATM. It's called VSAT antenna, very small satellite aperture terminal. So, this VSAT antenna basically communicates with a satellite which is at around 36,000 kilometers from the surface of Earth, and it communicates to the bank servers which are located in Mumbai or somewhere, to complete this transaction. Otherwise, you will not be able to withdraw money. So this is an example of satellite communication system. And of course, in your Google Earth or Google Maps, you are using a base map where you can see the locations of the buildings also. So all that is basically coming from satellites which are known as high resolution or high resolution imaging satellite system. Around Bits Pilani, if a new building is coming up in last 3 months, on a map it will never get updated until unless you have a satellite imaging, because in India the mapping was done or it is being done by Survey of India. Many of their maps are some 20 years old or 30 years old. So if you are shifted to a new apartment and you want a delivery to come, but if that apartment is not there on the map, that boy will never come to the house. So that also gets, now maps also gets digitally updated by the use of space technology, and for that there is something called Earth Observation Satellite System, which basically creates every 10 days, 15 days, new images of Earth, where you can locate your buildings, where you can locate new infrastructure, you can locate a new road which has come. So all these things is also happening, the updation of digital maps are also happening based on the satellite technology. So these are the 3 primary applications: satellite navigation, that is a position service; satellite communication, communicating in remote areas, even if you are going on a ship cruise, if you are going from Calicut to, let's say, from Kochi to Lakshadweep, Agati, you have to go in an open ocean where your mobile phone will not work. So if at all any phone works, it's a satellite in that area, because there are no towers, still towers. And of course, the third one is called Earth observation or remote sensing, where basically you make measurements or you do imaging of the Earth, and then you come to know about various aspects of the Earth's surface also. And the third, another aspect is also what we call the space exploration. That means we are living in solar system. Our God is Sun. We have how many planets? 7 or 8 planets, depending on your love to Pluto, you can decide. So we also are interested in knowing. Many of us are very much fond of knowing about our neighbors. So बाजू वाले के घर में क्या चल रहा है? So our neighbors are Moon, Mars. Our neighbors is Venus, then Jupiter. We want to know what is happening there. Why there are no humans on Jupiter? Why there are no humans on Mars? Why there are no humans on Moon? What is so different there? How do we know? We know all this knowledge because they are far off worlds. All this knowledge about our neighborly, celestial bodies have also come through satellite-based observation system. So we are also launching satellites to know more about these planets. All that is called interplanetary. We also put observatories in space to know more about star formation. How a star is formed, how a black hole is formed, how a star dies. All that observations can also be done through multispectral observations or studying those objects in different parts of electromagnetic spectrum by sensors, so the camera systems which you can put on different. So instead of looking towards Earth, those systems look towards stars, galaxies, and you come to know about those things also. Similarly, you can also have those sensors in different parts of the instrument. So that science is called astronomy or satellite astronomy. So you have satellite astronomy, you have planetary sciences, and there is something called nowadays, we are also looking for planets which are not in our own solar system. That research is called exoplanet. So in this talk for half an hour or so, I will let you know that was essentially on Earth, what type of applications basically satellite capable. Yeah, so this slide says that we are moving towards space ubiquity. That means space enterprise is going from niche to ubiquities, creating value for multiple sectors. And I told you all this, what I just described: position, navigation, and timing, your location, as well as timing. Many of you may wonder, wow, what is timing? But timing is a very important service. All across the world, we have different time zones. And there needs to be synergy. Especially, I will give you a very simple example. Many of you may be dealing in stock markets. Today, all stock markets are linked. Indian stock market is linked with NASDAQ. They are also linked with Shanghai markets. They all operate in different time zones. But trading across various, stock exchanges is also done. And trading time is very critical. You can see last 2 days itself, if you are tracking gold and silver, hourly basis, minute by minute basis, the prices are fluctuating. So if you are a trader and if you put a trade which basically gets executed after 5 minutes, you may lose good amount of money or you may gain good amount of money. So all across exchanges, it is ensured today, as soon as you press button, your trades are executed. For that, time synchronization across stock exchanges are most important. So there are atomic clocks which basically measures time with the precision of 10 to the power minus 12 seconds. So with that precision, all the satellites will transmit times, and all across India with NPL today, all these satellite-based atomic watches, they are being used for synchronizing times across various time zones in India and then with other countries also. So timing becomes a very important service today for doing various financial transactions. So position, timing, and navigation. It's called PNT service. Communication, I also told you, nowadays satellite internet, without internet also we cannot live. Say, हमारे ज़माने में all the Gen Zs, you may not have heard, but जब हम लोग पिक्चर देखते थे, मूवीज जाते थे, तो एक स्लोगन होता था, रोटी कपड़ा और मकान, तो वही नहीं मिलता था, फिर वो बदल गया. अभी रोटी कपड़ा मकान तो चाहिए, उसके अंदर इंटरनेट, without internet, life is zero. So now internet also basically depends on speed. Terrestrial network system, the most advanced fiber optic systems also have some limitation on speeds. So now newer high bandwidth throughput systems are coming through satellites. Many of you have heard about Starlink satellites. Starlink is what? It's a constellation of thousands of satellites orbiting in low Earth orbit. I will tell you those orbit concepts also. And they are transmitting your internet signals which you can receive like a dish antenna, like a DTH, television antenna at our home. We can put a dish antenna and direct to home internet at around, hundreds of Gbps speed can be there. You can create local routers, and then in local area, everybody need not have a dish. Like earlier, cable fellows used to be there. They used to see and then through cable, they used to distribute cable signals to houses. So here also a person who can create a hub, and then he can set up a local network and then start providing Wi-Fi services through internet-based services. So this is the new concept. Now Starlink is also getting operational license in India, and many Indian ventures like Bharati Airtel, etc. also planning, even Jio is also planning to have satellite-based internet services in future. So in next 5 years, the entire internet, domain in India may likely to get changed from terrestrial network to satellite-based, internet services. So that's another core area which is getting developed. And of course, as I told you, imaging for Earth is called Earth observation and space exploration. I already talked about. So all these, satellites which provide these services are put into orbits around Earth. There are 2-3 different type of orbits which are typically used. So typically, Earth observation satellite systems, they go from pole to pole. Earth is a round body. it's a sphere or spheroid, you can say. So from North Pole to South Pole, this satellite will orbit, and it orbits in a way that when Earth moves, it keeps on seeing different parts of the world. These type of orbits are typically from 500 kilometers to 800 kilometers from the surface of Earth. They are known as low Earth orbit satellites. Then, at a height of around 36,000 kilometers from Earth's surface, you achieve a condition called geostationary. That means the satellite's orbital velocity is basically same as the orbital velocity of the Earth. So the relative velocity becomes zero. So those type of orbits are known as geostationary orbits, and they are not pole to pole, they are around the equator. So I put a satellite at around the equator which moves with the same speed in reverse direction with which the Earth moves. So with respect to Earth, the satellite becomes stationary, and that type of satellites are called geostationary satellites. So what it means, that any sensor which we put on that satellite will continuously see only that part of the Earth. So over India, if I want to see, I can place a satellite around 89 or 80-degree longitude where only India and surroundings will be seen. So if I want to do send communication signals, that is the best orbit for me, because 24/7 I need communication. If I want to study cloud patterns or weather patterns over India every 15 minutes, then I can put a camera over there in geostationary orbit. Every 15 minutes I can open that camera, take a picture, and then I know that what kind of weather systems are developing, because from 36,000 kilometers, the distance is so far that I need to build a huge telescope if you want to see the cars, which I don't want to do. So I want to see the course of things. So course of things like cloud patterns, wind patterns, etc. can be seen from that orbits. So these are the two typical orbits, low Earth orbit and the geostationary orbits, which are basically used for placing these satellites. There is something also called geosynchronous orbit, which is of course at around 36,000 kilometers, but its inclination around Earth is not zero. That means it's not around equator. You can tilt that orbit. So this from the equatorial plane, some angle will come. So with those angles, the satellite will orbit in the inclined way around the Earth's surface. They are called geosynchronous, orbits. So many of the satellite systems today, as far as India is concerned, today we are operating around 56 satellites, which are mostly launched by ISRO. Now we have a private sector companies also entering this space, but till now they are just in the infancy. I will talk in end about that startup culture, because many of you students are involved. So we have around 22 this Earth observation satellites, which basically are observing Earth, 18 communication satellites, and then 8 navigation satellites and the regional constellation called Navi, 4 space science satellites. Many of you must have heard about Chandrayaan-1, Chandrayaan-2, Chandrayaan-3 landed. Then we have launched a satellite to study sun also. It's called Aditya. Many of you must have heard about these names in newspaper, press media, etc., etc. So this is our current assets, which we call the space, which are providing services. Typically, it's not a big number. You may see that 56 is a big number, but if you compare with a country like China, they are operating more than 500 satellite systems today. America at a given time operates thousands of satellite systems today. So the space around Earth, which basically starts from 100 kilometers and above, it's a really crowded place. If you see or visualize all objects which are going around Earth, you will see that why collisions are not happening. So collisions in Earth, around the Earth space, is also a reality today, and many people are working towards that. But we will not talk about that subject because it's a subject nature. Now, all these satellites are launched for some purpose. They are not launched only, to show and demonstrate that we have a capability of rocket launch. Rockets are only a transportation medium. Because they have to defy the gravity of the Earth, and we have to launch objects with an escape velocity which can escape the Earth's gravitational field. So typically we achieve around 10 to 11 meters per second velocity by these rocket systems. Otherwise, the satellite will fall back onto the Earth's surface. So with that velocity, if you can achieve, then you have a successful rocket launch. We had some couple of failures recently, many of you must have heard, simply because we reached up to the 500 kilometers or so, our fourth stage, third stage failures happened, but we could not achieve the appropriate velocity for that object. So what will happen? The objects will go 1 or 2 rounds around Earth, but it will start falling because it has not achieved that escape velocity. In your 10th standard, you must have heard about escape velocity concept. So that is what a rocket does. So rocket is nothing but it's a velocity machine. It provides an object a sufficient velocity so that it doesn't fall back onto the Earth's surface. If the rocket is not able to do that, then it's not a successful launch. So using all the satellites, around 56 satellites, for Earth observation satellite, we are providing services for agriculture, water resources, environment, natural resources, ocean monitoring, weather, climate, cartography, governance. Satellite communication is being used for telecommunication, broadband, internet services, in-flight and maritime services. See, many of you, of course, in India, domestic flights, we don't provide internet services. Some of the new airplanes are not providing. But if you fly to Emirates from Dubai or from Dubai to Europe and all, they are providing you internet while you are on the aircraft also. How does an aircraft will get internet? There is no tower in air. No? So this all happens through a satellite-based system. The satellite basically emanates that particular frequency and through which the data is, is provided to you through a carrier frequency where the data is modulated on a carrier frequency or your mobile phone will receive that carrier frequency. Then there is a receiver which will do the demodulation, etc. And then you get the real signals. Okay, so and same way in oceans also, when you go for a long cruise or if you are a sailor or if you are working in Navy, you need to communicate to your headquarters or you need to make a phone call or a video call to your friends or your relatives. All that happens through satellite-based communication. A lot of people in villages and remote areas also receive television. A lot of doctors are nowadays using telemedicine services. Suppose if you are a patient in Andaman Nicobar somewhere and you need a specialized, consultation with a doctor sitting in Chennai. And if you don't have a very good video connection or a internet connection, you can always use satellite communication system for providing a telemedicine service, search and rescue in case of disasters, and then of course rural connectivity. All that is being serviced today satellite communication. Satellite navigation, as I told you, tracking services, especially for maritime sector. These fishermen, there are more than 9 lakh fishermen around India, and they go to fishing every day in deep ocean. After 20 kilometers from the coastline, their mobile phone will not work. To track them and to talk to them with their family members, there is no way. If there is a cyclone or if they are being hijacked by, if they go very close to Pakistan, Pakistani Navy will capture them, Sri Lankan Navy will capture them. How do they communicate back? So now we are fitting almost, more than 35,000 boats have now been fitted with this GPS enabled receivers onto this board so that while they are in the open ocean also, there is a messaging service through which their locations, etc. can be known and they can simply send a small SMS while they are in trouble. Similarly, trains, all in India, how many trains are operating every day? Does anybody know the number? More than 13,000 trains operates every day in India, 13,000 trains. So Indian Railways is almost the second largest train operator in the world today. Out of that, now we have fitted all tracking devices on 10,400 trains. So today, if you go to a rail live, status, you will almost know the near real-time location of your train. If your friend or if your relative is coming, you can know that train is delayed by 5 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours. So that advantage was not there with people like us. First of all, nowadays many of you don't travel by train. But we people, when we were growing up and of your age, even second AC and third AC was a big luxury. So we used to travel in only in sleeper class. And the trains used to be late. So your relative will not know that this train is coming. So they will reach railway station 5 hours in advance. Poor fellow is waiting. There was no way of knowing real position. But today, with this kind of devices, location-based devices, you can know the real-time locations of your train also and locomotives also. All across country, this kind of a service is being provided. And of course, there are some other advanced things which I will not talk total electron content in ionosphere. We are also developing a Navig chipset, which is now going to come in your mobile. So apart from GPS signals, there is a small ICE chip which is going to come in all Indian manufactured mobile where the Navig signals also can be received. There is something called reflectometry. This all Navig signals are freely available. When they hit the Earth surface, you can receive them back, and then you can do some sensing about the Earth also. And of course, disaster management. We do flood mapping using these images, flood forecasting, and stuff like this. And of course, for our own security and safety, we have seen last year Operation Sindoor, and many of you may not be aware about 71 war, 99 Kargil war and all, but last year itself we had a small skirmish with our Pakistan and all. So today, without space, we cannot fight war. If I had to launch a BrahMos missile, which has to hit some target in Pakistan, how do I know where is the target? I'm not going, they are not allowing you to go there and map and find the location of their objects. How do I know where is their nuclear reactor? Where is their, critical army installations? All that information comes from this high resolution satellite imagery, which are precisely mapped. It's called orthophoto rectification. We can know up to the very detailed location, and I can feed that location when I am launching my missiles. And most of the time, you have seen that missile systems today, if GPS signals are not spoofed, they will hit precisely at that location with very accurate, with accuracy, sub-meter accuracy, they will hit the location. This all happens because of many of the space systems for safety, security, and electronic surveillance. See, today, if some, a group of terrorists is operating in some jungle, still we come to know. How do we come to know? As soon as we switch on the mobile, that electronic signal can be picked up by a satellite system that in this area some guys are using these frequencies. This is called electronic intelligence. And based on that input, you can take action on the ground. Today, by flying a UAV at 30,000 kilometers, I can hover around that area, and if some Naxalite movement is happening, security forces are using real-time footage of the movement of those people, and based on that real-time footage, the operations are being done by our security agencies to catch them and to eliminate them. So that's the level of use of sensors and technology in safety and security and national security. So all these satellite systems today, I will talk only on Earth observation satellites. We have different series of satellites, natural resources, large scale mapping, oceans, and of course atmosphere. So we'll see some examples of this. How does a satellite system look like? You see, this is one of the telescope or one of the camera. Your cameras are very small nowadays. Mobile camera is so small, but satellite cameras cannot be small because they have to see small objects from a big height. So we need to build a big telescope. So this has around 1 meter telescope here, and then back-end electronics. So this is the optics here. This is the telescope of the camera. This is back-end electronics. The payload will weigh around 400 kg. So these cameras of that class, 300 to 400 kilogram is the weight of this. Then they are integrated to this satellite system here. You can see there's this is the telescope here. And then satellite has to function. So it has to have its own energy generation source. So they have these solar panels which are mounted here. It also has to get protected from radiation and thermal emission. So it is coated with a gold layer. And then this is how this bird, which is of course weighing around 2000 kg or so, has to be put into space. So a truck kind of a thing, has to be lifted by these rockets, and then it has to be delivered into space. And then when it starts operating in space, this is the result. Now you can see the details, This is an image over Europe by our own same camera, which I just showed you. That is the Cartosat series camera. It has capability to detect 30 centimeter objects onto the ground. So a small moving car, people in this, stadiums. I can know the entire environment around this particular area, and then I can create what is called as the digital map of any city using this data. This is across border. This is our border with China in Tibet. Tibet, many part of Tibet was annexed in 1961 war by China. That time, our politicians told, so what if China has taken some part of the Tibet where nothing, even not a blade of grass grows? But you see, in same technology, what is happening today? Many of you will think it's a very high altitude region, 4,000 to 5,000 meters from mean sea level. What you will do, where you can have even air to breathe. If some of you are going to Ladakh, you have to acclimatize, otherwise you will get headaches. So even the oxygen level is so low. But our adversary, you see what he is doing. So this is only 50 kilometers from our border. This yellow line, Uttarakhand border. There is a place called Jenda Kunti here. Now, when I take a satellite picture, otherwise this will all look barren. You see, this is the kind of infrastructure being developed by Chinese. Very close to our proximity. There is a 4-kilometer length runway where any advanced aircraft can land around this city. So this is all you come to know through satellite imaging only. Otherwise, you cannot go in this area. They will not allow you. They will arrest you. So you can see something written here in Mandarin, in Chinese. They have a fancy of writing on the slopes of the hills. Their slogans, the communist slogan. All those slogans we can read from space, from 600 kilometers away from the Earth. So this type of images basically are being used for surveillance and monitoring the infrastructure development by adversaries and creating and digitally updating the infrastructure which they are developing, either military infrastructure or civil infrastructure. We can also, today, not only take images, we can take videos from space. So this is a video, you can see the cars moving. Can you put this slide, lights off, right here? This is the whole Cairo in Egypt. So this is a small 3-minute video captured from space, from satellite. So if somebody thinks, that you can only take photographs, that's not thing. Any missiles, any launches, aircraft today taking off from any of the adversaries, any adversaries air station, you can see how a cloud is moving. This is the road, all traffic movements on the roads you can monitor from spacecraft by putting an event monitoring camera. So suppose somebody is going to attack Iran. Nowadays, how do they know immediately that it's going to happen? Because they have all systems, as soon as the aircraft takes place, even in night, many of these advanced countries will come to know that something is going to happen, and then they take evasive action. So this is the level of, information availability from the sensors which are developed by our electronics and, optics labs in the country. And this type of applications can be supported. Many of you must have heard recently about a joint mission between India and NASA called NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar, NISR mission. So this is a small story. India's space program started in 1963 by a rocket which basically was gifted to India. It's called Nike Apache rocket. It was gifted by US in 1963. And that gift which we took, we developed our rocket systems and all, and today, same America is coming for our help for launching their satellite. This is the transformation of this country, and we all should be proud of that people, those who are educated in small colleges and towns, in ISRO and all, many IITians also don't work. Many of them, they go abroad only. So many students are small colleges, small cities, they only have worked hard and taken that challenge to reach those kind of heights where now we are able to launch American things from the soil of India. So this is a great transformation. This has happened only in 30-40 years. So this is the beauty when we have launched this NISR satellite. It's one of the most advanced satellite, 10,000 crore rupee satellite, because it has an antenna system, which basically 12-meter antenna, which unfurls. It's like a umbrella. When you put an umbrella, that unfurls. So a 12-meter umbrella, electronically I can control, and that it unfurls and then it starts sending pulses towards Earth. You can see this, and then these reflected pulses are received here, and large amount of electronic processing is done, and this type of images are created. And this is one of the image of the glacier in Antarctica. The advantage of operating these satellites is that you don't depend on the sun. All that images which I showed you, they can only be acquired during the daytime because they receive the reflected solar energy. But here, a microwave energy in L band frequency or S band frequency is sent, and that is reflected from this, and it can penetrate clouds because clouds, the wavelength is much larger than the cloud particle size. So during cloudy conditions, during day and night, it gives me capability of imaging any part of the earth at a very high spatial resolution. You can see these crevasses and details of this glacier in a fantastic manner. Since time is less, I will not go into details of it, but not only two-dimensional images, we can also create third dimension. That means we can create terrain or topography using a phenomenon called cartography. So we can put two camera systems which are separated by a distance. See, all of us, including some of the animals, they have two eyes. Sometimes you must think that why you have two eyes. You can close one eye, still same thing is visible. But because our mind is trained, if from the birth I have only one eye, I will never get the depth perception. The depth perception comes from this concept of parallax. That means looking same object given small distance. This is called parallax. So if I create same conditions on a satellite, I will look, you can see the two cameras are tilted. So they are looking same place but from two different angles. So by using a mathematical transformation, there is something called photogrammetry techniques. You must be using many of civil engineers and others also using photographic photogrammetry. I can reconstruct the third dimension, that is the height direction. And I can create what is known as the digital elevation models. So this is the full India digital elevation model at 10 meter by 10 meter interval which we have generated. And I will show a small simulation. You see, when you track this digital elevation models on those two-dimensional images, I can create digital twins of Himalayas. Right now, you are going to fly sitting here in Hyderabad. I am taking you to Gangotri. So, from where the Ganga originates, this is the Bhagirathi river, and this is where the Gomukh glacier is. At this point, the ice starts melting and the water starts trickling down and it forms the mighty river Ganga. But at that location, it is known as Bhagirathi only. Though so many other rivers, they meet later on. And this is now you are flying over the Gangotri glacier. This is how a glacier looks like. When you go to higher altitude, there is fresh snow also. These are the kind of steep slopes which you can experience. If you go on an expedition on this glacier, now you know, sitting in your lab, what are you expect? What kind of slopes will be there? What kind of heights you have to climb? So this technology is known as digital twins. You can create a digital twin of natural reality sitting in your laboratory itself. I can make measurements of this slope. I can find out that how a road can be aligned. If a telecommunication tower has to be done, I can do the line of sight studies by utilizing this type of digital elevation models for any kind of developmental activity and for any strategic use also. So this is the advantage of this technology for various applications. All this data which we are collecting, now ISRO Department of Space has opened up all this data. All of you can download this data right now in your laptop from a portal called Unity portal of NRSC. All 5 meter codes resolution data is freely downloadable by everyone in India or even abroad. So many of you, those who are interested in image processing, data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence for information extraction, this is a data mine for you. And you all will be able to get this. Earlier, some people have to pay money. Now in academic institutions, especially with universities and all, money is always a problem. Funding is always an issue. So to solve all that problem, Government of India has made all these resources free so that research and development can get accelerated in our university system. So some of you can go to this Unity site, you can start downloading. These are some of the applications which I will talk about. I will just simply go about one or two. Agriculture. Agriculture is 55% of Indians are still dependent on agriculture activity. Our markets, 12% of India's GDP is still coming from agriculture. All of you are every day eating rice, wheat, and then a lot of vegetables and fruits and all those things. India is the second largest producer of food grain in the country. Now, how many of you know that from where rice comes to your plate? Every day you eat beautiful rice, basmati rice, this, that, right? How do you know that how much rice production is happening in India? Using satellite technology, that's the microwave technology, I am creating every season for Ministry of Agriculture the crop map of India. So all these yellow areas which you are seeing, in 24, 25, every year, they are the production hubs of rice in India. So maximum rice is being produced in Punjab, Haryana, Eastern Uttar Pradesh. This is all, sugarcane belt. If some of you have gone to Saharanpur, UP, Aligarh, no rice, all sugarcane. So this is sugarcane. And this is here Telangana. Then Kaveri Delta here in Tamil Nadu and all these areas. So these are the areas from where agriculture production happens. What do we do with this map? This map is so useful for Ministry of Agriculture. If we know that this year rice production is going to be less by 1%, 2%, I can create policies for import export. Price control. I can get rice from some other country. If I am having more production, I can export rice. If I am having less wheat production, I can control prices by knowing in advance that how much production is going to happen. If I know area, I can multiply by some factor. I know that how much rice productivity is happening. But at the same time, the farmers also gets benefited by this information if I provide this information at the field level. How much crop loss has happened due to monsoon, rainfall. Now, crop insurance, is getting settled through the satellite observation. There is a national program which is running. Because we don't have much time, I'm not going to talk about that. Water, food and water, these are the two most important things. Every day, every 15 days, using satellite data, we are providing inventory of surface water in reservoirs, how much water is available throughout the year. So this is like a reservoir which provides water to Bangalore city. 2 years back, there was a drought situation. And you see, the water depleted from 10,000 hectares to almost 4,000 hectares by the time we came in the March. Because of near to summer season, there is no water in reservoirs. So using this data, the managers who are dealing water and supplying that water to the cities, they can think of creating alternate source of water and water supply can be ensured. So we have what is known as the water spread meter for entire country. For each reservoir on a 15-day basis, you can know how much water is available at different reservoirs levels in India. Himalaya, basically all the mighty North Indian rivers like Ganga, Yamuna, Indus, Brahmaputra, they all emanate from here. Billions of people, they get water for drinking, irrigation, tourism, spiritual purposes from the snow melt and the glacial melt runoff. Using satellite images, we can find out how much snow is there, how much snow melt is going to happen. There are models which basically gives you advanced information about snow melt. Lot of hydropower plants are there, which basically generates electricity. They know they want to know how much water is going to come so that I can use it for electricity generation. So in an operational scenario, this information using satellite data is being provided. In places like Rajasthan, there is plenty of water in some places. In some places there is nothing. Even part of Telangana suffers. So the villagers need groundwater. Their people are spending crores of rupees to find even a bit of water in this country. Otherwise, they have to travel miles, with that, keeping a picture on their head and all. So we find out, areas which are known as paleo channels. That means they are ancient channels through which water used to flow. In the desert, you can see there are some areas which are greener. And they are greener because there are something called old channels which are buried through which water used to pass. And if you can find out this location, we have done some geophysical surveys in one such location called resistivity survey, and based on that, we can advise those fellows or farmers or the villagers that if you do borewell at this location, instead of doing a borewell here, if you do borewell here, you will get definitely water, and a water which is sustainable over few years. Otherwise, all that investment in tree drilling goes totally waste. So even groundwater, exploration is being supported by Space India. Disasters, every year flood happens in the country. This is 2025. This much red area got affected by floods. So each and every flood episode we are mapping using satellite data and creating flood inventory. All these kind of flood maps, are being provided to our, ground administration. Recently in Sri Lanka, there was floods. So this is a flood map of Sri Lanka. Here you can see all these black areas are under flood. In Raleigh, in Uttarakhand last year, there was a big catastrophic landslide which has happened. These many houses were there. And now, this was the situation before the disasters. And this is what happened after disaster. All these houses, once you go there, you don't know now where was the house. There is no map available for those houses. People have to pay compensation. They immediately ask us, please help us. where were these locations of the buildings. So how do I had some old image, I could track all those buildings using some AI engine, generated the building map, superimposed on this, and now all these buildings, we could say that these many houses or these many buildings got lost. Some people, their properties and all, if they want to excavate, etc. This information becomes very handy for any post-disaster scenario. We are also providing a flood early warning, we are in Andhra and all on a 24/7 basis. Landslides, forest fires, all these things are getting supported with the help of satellite imagery today. This, we have created something called National Database for Emergency Management. This is a portal, some of you can Google also. And all disasters, any kind of disaster which is happening in the country, you will come to know their location. If there is a fire happening here, forest fire, the cyclone is happening, or a avalanche, snowfall, everything, any kind of disaster coming from IMD inquires many organizations which provide this information. You can find on a unified portal, and now this is working at the Ministry of Home Affairs. This was launched this year only, last year June, by our Home Minister Amit Shah ji. And this provides a backbone for disaster support in the country today, where a large amount of space input goes. A few examples on energy, energy, especially solar energy, is very critical because we need to reduce our carbon footprint. And using satellite data, we can map that which areas are most conducive for solar energy. And large amount of information, especially this new report which has come up, solar PV potential in India. So all these states, they have the largest solar potential. We are running AI using satellite data. We can find out the PV panels like this and how a solar park gets developed. We can train a machine learning algorithm, and then using that trained algorithm, we have run on entire India data and find out the location of all power plants, solar power plants. So all these blue dots are basically the existing solar power farms which are 10 hectares and bigger. Now you will get some surprises. Telangana, Andhra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, they have more solar power production compared to Rajasthan and Gujarat. People think that solar power happens there only. But this is the kind of surprise you will get for doing AI-based machine analytics for solar power. Same way you can do for canals. You can also do for many other energy installations. You can train an AI data set and then generate and do. This is petabytes of data which was processed only 15 days using an AI-based tool. Oceans also another important area. We are generating fishery services to our fishermen. Cyclones, one of the major important examples in cyclone today. India has the capability to forecast cyclone 5 days in advance simply because of this kind of 15-minute imagery available from spacecrafts today, from satellites today. Navik is another important thing, which is our regional constellation. Slowly we are thinking that our dependence on GPS we have to remove, because GPS spoofing and then denial of services, etc. With the regime in America is a very naughty regime. We don't know what they will do tomorrow. So our dependence on them has to be minimum. So India has its own constellation. There are some difficulties today. Only 5 satellites are active. Very soon this year, another 3 satellites are going to launch. And now, as I told you, we will have a chip in all our mobiles, which will also receive Navik signals. So our dependence on for search and rescue, disaster, telemedicine, etc. on GPS is going to reduce drastically. So all these things which I talked, with data, etc., is not only images and data. This we provide all this information through ISRO portals. Some of you can get information from Google portal, Vedas, Mossack. These are all available on a free public platform from ISRO, different ISRO centers. We continue to have endeavor to plan for future. We are working with French and some German colleagues, and some of our own Indian satellite systems are listed here. We will not talk in detail about it, but if you are interested, maybe you can get in touch with me, and then some of you can visit National Remote Sensing Center, which is almost from 20 kilometers away from here. We have a training and outreach center. Many student activities, internship opportunities ISRO is providing to students of colleges and universities, and also for doing opportunities of research by funding a lot of research projects also in academia as well as within ISRO center. So what is on horizon? What is likely to happen? That we will have a economy which is space-driven economy. Currently, India is only contributing 2% of global space economy. Vision of our government under Honorable PM is to have 10% of this economic share, and this cannot be done by ISRO alone. So they have opened up the space sector for private sector participation. In last 3 years, where there used to be only 2 or 3 startups in space, today there are more than 300 startups in space sector. Companies like Dhruva Space, companies like Skywood, many of these companies are located here in Hyderabad itself. The Hyderabad is a hub for space startups. All tech startups are happening here. And many of them are basically getting into businesses now. And with the participation of our youth and the youngsters, which are also getting good amount of funding opportunities by investors, we feel that we will be able to make a big difference, and India is going to really emerge as a real space economic superpower in times to come. And we have programs like, we are also going to develop a space station. We are thinking to put man on the moon surface by 2040. All these endeavors which have been started today will lead to catastrophic growth in the field of space technology, space applications, and space-based services to the common man. So I invite some of you young people to look into this sector and make your careers with all of us. Thank you very much for your time.
So I just have one quick question about this NAVIC chip that you mentioned. So you told that the chips will be integrated. Yeah. So the NAVIC chips that will be integrated in the Indian manufactured mobile phones. Yes. So will that same service be available to like the older mobile phone versions which do not have the chips?
No, if you do not have a receiver chip, you cannot get the signals. So what is the new policy government of India has come up that any new mobile phone since 2023 onwards, which is being manufactured in India, will have multi-GNSS signal capability.
Okay.
So it will have GPS tracking, it will have NAVIC tracking, and then free signals from the Chinese and Russian, because the frequencies are more or less same.
Right.
So earlier the problem was previous version of NAVIC, we were not having L1 and L5 frequencies. So our compatibility with global GNSS systems were not there. That is why many chip manufacturers, which are international people, they were not willing because they were not having business in those frequency range. L5 and S-band only we were giving. So beyond India, their business was not able to sustain. So we have made a course correction now in NAVIC, our next generation NAVIC 2.0 series is going on. We have same set of frequencies which are being used for GPS signal. So same chip with small modifications for frequencies of their side change, they can use it for receiving multiple GNSS signal. So any future mobiles, already many manufacturers are now integrating it. You will see that you will be having capability of multi-GNSS receiver, and your signal strength as well as your location accuracy is likely to improve drastically.
So I would need to upgrade my
Upgrade your old phone. Anyway, nowadays people are buying every 2 years, 1 year. Youngsters are buying every 6 months. So iPhones also, those who are now, many iPhones are also getting manufactured in India now. They have started. So hopefully in iPhones also the service will get done. It is by law, government has made.
So, thank you.
Any one of the questions you have? Yeah, then we can take it. Even though we are running out of time.
Sir, you said that we can extract images and videos of the whatever is written on the ground, but how do we extract data from the
Subsurface.
groundwater reservoirs?
Okay, so groundwater, as I told you, remote sensing images will give you some idea about the surface. And if you use microwave data about subsurface up to few meters, it can penetrate, okay, 1 meter or so. But if you really want to go deeper, then satellite data will not give you that indication. You have to use that indication of like vegetation anomaly, in a desert where vegetation is there, likelihood of having water will be more. So you first proxy will be this data, then you decide your location. Then there are other geophysical methods. There is a method called resistivity method, where you put electricity through some electrodes into the ground and you map the conductivity of some surface, which can give you up to 100 meters, the entire conductivity profile And if the conductivity is low, that means it is, or the conductivity is high, resistivity is low, it is water, present the water in ground. So it's a combination of 2-3 methods which basically gives you pointed location of availability of water for drilling purpose. Okay.
Do you feel like there is a?
Yeah, so basically what happens, like this bits planning campus, you cannot drill anywhere. Huh? You need to find a most conducive location where water will be accumulating. So the slope where water flows, a channel, if it is there, natural channel, water will be flowing and accumulating into groundwater. So first to decide on that location. That location can be decided using satellite data, and then do the ground-based survey. So this kind of approach is normally adopted. Okay.
What is the rate of?
Yeah, so that is highly localized. You put some electrodes at that ground. So this will give you idea within few hundred meters of that area. So within that, you can anywhere you can drill, you will get the location. Okay. Okay, I think thank you very much. If you have maybe break, then we can discuss later on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shnahan, for your insightful presentation. Now, I would like to call Professor Purnalago Ayan and Dr. Priyanka to present a token of appreciation to our director, Professor G. Sriram, for providing institutional facilities to host this interview. Now, I would like to call our session chair, Professor Anita Kushal, to introduce our first speaker.
I can tell him he is online. He'll be joining in the WebEx.
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Professor Shanmuga Sundar Dhanabalan from La Trobe University, Australia. He is an accomplished researcher in soft electronics and wearable sensors and leads the Soft Electronics, Materials and Sensors Research Group. His work focuses on translating advanced sensor technologies into real-world healthcare applications. Please join me in welcoming Professor Dhanabalan for his talk titled Soft Electronics, Making Wearable Technology Feel Like a Second Skin. Over to Professor Dhanabalan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, you
Okay.
You are audible.
Okay. Is my screen visible? Can you able to see my
Yes,
slides?
sir, it is visible.
Okay. Yeah.
It is visible.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you for the introduction. So myself, Dr. Shanmuga Sundar Dhanabalan. I'm currently working as Associate Director of Research, and I lead a soft electronics, materials, and sensors.
Sir, can you
research group.
please move a bit closer to the mic? Your voice is very feeble.
Oh, just a minute. Is it now audible?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about soft electronics, making wearable technology feel like a second skin. So I'm saying about the overview of my talk. I'm going to talk about role of wearables in healthcare. So what are the application of wearables in healthcare? Also, what is the fabrication technology we use for developing these kind of wearables? And some of the wearables we developed in our group, such as like wearable ECG devices and wearable optical glucometers. Also, I focus on industry collaborations to give a bit of brief about insights about how we are transforming the ideas into commercialization product. And finally, I handle with challenges and future perspectives. So I was supposed to start the talk by 10 a.m. in the morning, but now it's like it was delayed like 45 minutes. So it was like 10:45. But I have some other meetings, so I will try to make my talk very crisp and keep it simple. So wearables. So I would like to start this talk with some imagination. So imagine like if you are wearing a wearable device or a wearable patch in your body that can keep measuring like different parameters such as like temperature, pH, glucose content, ECG, and that can store all the data in the real time. So can you imagine that how fascinating it is? And do you think that these devices will be available in the near future for us? Yes, we can make this technology real with the help of wearables. So wearables, these are like small wearable devices that can wear on our body. So to keep continuously monitor like different parameters like physiological, biochemical, and even like behavioral parameters. So what this wearable consists of? So these wearables consist of like a main important thing called sensors, which sends all the data from the body and it communicates with to the processor like a microcontroller, which will transmit the data into like a readable data. And it has a Wi-Fi module, like a wireless module. It may be either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or NFC that can transmit all the data to the cloud as well as the mobile app. Apart from this, to power up this wearable, we need a power unit. So that can be a rechargeable or like a replaceable small batteries. So how this wearable is going to change our way of like way of the treatment which we are getting now is like it provides like a personalized treatment. It gives like more empowerment to the patients to take care of their life. And saying about the market, like the statistic of wearables, the global wearable technology is expected to reach 74 billion by 2025. Also, if you see the number of wrist wearable devices have been increased like significantly from 66.5 million to 105.3 millions. So even now we can see like every person like they're wearing some smart watch or like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit, whatever it may be. So all of them comes under a single umbrella called wearables. Also, number of users for wearable devices over 1 billion. So a lot of products are in pipeline and soon we can expect them to be in the market. So what is the needs? So how it going to change? So I like to highlight like three main needs. The first one is benefits for patients. For example, say like if the person like maybe either he or she has been diagnosed with a glucose diabetes, so he or she has to like do like bloods every alternate day. So then what they have to do? They have to go to labs or hospitals. Then they have to give like blood to for the processing. But if you develop a wearable that can able to continuously monitor like your blood glucose level without going, no, also that is like non-invasive without going to hospital and labs, and you can do this measurement in like in-house setting, then that is very useful. That is benefits for patients. So it automatically reduces the time that required to visit hospitals, also waiting in the queue, those things. Apart from this, the second advantage is medical bill. For example, if you consider like public hospitals where they go for like major operations. For example, say like if the person is going for a cardiac open heart surgery, then after the cardiac open heart surgery, they has to monitor for like a week or two continuously to keep track of the heart activities. So at that time, the person has to stay in the hospital, which will obviously increase the medical cost, also the burden to the hospitals. Also, the major problem is it delays the treatment to the next patient, because like once the patient get discharged, the next patient should be admitted. So in order to overcome this, we can use this wearable. So now we have the wearable ECG patches, which can continuously monitor the heart rates, ECG. So after the open heart surgery, the person can discharge immediately. So with the wearable, so they can keep track of this ECG through online. And finally, support for doctors and surgeons. So what it does is like the wearables will comes with a wireless model, which will continuously log all the data in the cloud. So 24/7. So once we get like continuous data, so we can do a lot of data processing and we can able to get like detailed insights about the disease. So it will support like doctors and surgeons to provide customized treatments. These are some of the needs for wearable. And seeing about the roadmap of wearables, so yeah, the gray one represents the commercial devices, and the blue one represents the research level devices. So from 1962, that's the first wearable sensors have been developed, which is called Holter monitor for cardiac monitoring. Even though they call this as a wearable, it's a big chunk of device attached to the body so that it can help us to monitor the art activities, but it doesn't comes with wireless at that moment. So there is a storage unit also should be attached to the body so we can store all the data in the storage unit. And the next commercial product, if you see in 2014, one of the best thing came out is like Freestyle Libre by Abbott, which is the first wearable glucose monitoring, the continuous glucose monitoring. Though it is like it does like continuous monitoring, but it also comes with a small micro needle that should be attached to the body, which we call as like minimally invasive. It is not completely invasive. So there is a lot of research works are still in lab level so that we can see those devices in the market as soon as possible. Then on seeing about the building blocks of wearable sensors. So this is the building block for wearable sensors. So if you think of the device, we have like 4 major unit. One is the substrate. So we usually call the substrate as the backbone for the wearable device because we know like all the sensors and electronics going to be sit on top of the flexible substrate. So if the substrate is not bendable and flexible, then all device won't be a wearable device. So we use this lot of substrates have been researched and even using synthetic polymers, aerogels, also like plastic, PET, and those substrates are available in the market. Apart from this, the next major part on the wearable is like electrodes. That's a sensing unit we call as a sensors. So these electrodes will help us to acquire like the voltage signals across the body, the parameters from the body. So now we can fabricate the electrodes with the help of metals, like any metals like gold, silver, or like platinum. Apart from we also use like carbon and graphene based materials as well as hydrogels. Apart from these two, the other two main thing is like one is a decision making unit, which will help us to convert the data into a readable format so that we can able to understand what is the level of glucose in the body. For say example, we are measuring the glucose content. Apart from this, we have the power unit that is very important that provides us power to the entire block wearable devices. So either we can use like energy like batteries or we can use like energy harvesting technique. Now a lot of works have been in the energy harvesting technique so that how we can able to harvest the energy and store it in the unit. So apart from this, if you think of the sensing unit, so now there is different type of sensing transductions available, like it may be electromechanical, electrical, optical, or electrochemical. Apart from this, if you think like what are the non-invasive medium we can able to measure is like ISF, interstitial fluid, sweat, tear, saliva, urine, and breath. So these are some of the non-invasive medium which allow us to measure the parameters non-invasively. And seeing some of the wearables in healthcare is these are some of the wearables that are currently in the market. So fitness trackers, most of them we are like which gives like how much steps we have walked, everything. And smartwatches with the Apple now we can able to measure like heart rate, SpO2 levels, and even stress levels. Continuous glucose monitors, wearable ECG, blood pressure monitors. Apart from this, there's a main research going on in smart clothings, textiles. So where we are trying to embed those sensors in the textile. So once we are wearing the sleeves, which can able to measure all the parameters and stored in the cloud. Apart from this wearable biosensors, that is one of the major area which lot of works going on. Also, there are few people are working on like neuro wearables. So wearables for monitoring neural activities. So these are some of the benefits. And yeah, so before entering into some of the examples, so first I'd like to show like what we do. So I lead a group called Soft Electronics Materials Sensors Research Group at LATRO. So we are a group of engineers who tailor the electronic and optical properties of materials to design like micro, nanoscale, flexible, and SMD-based sensors. So we use like soft electronics and microfabrication and screen printing technology to develop those sensors. Also, we have a full setup in our lab to develop from the scratch and testing. And we focus like a lot of applications, but we focus mainly on medical applications as well. We also work with like translation research, like few startups and SMEs in Australia and globally. And these are some of the technology we work on. So for this talk, the particular technology we focus in the top 4. The one is the medtech devices, like a wearable devices we work on. Apart from this, we also work on like battery-free wearables and implants. So where there is no need for the battery, so it will harvest the energy from wirelessly. So there is, we call as a battery-free wearable and implants. And we also work on like different type of wireless monitoring, like we use like BLE, Wi-Fi, and NFC. And combining these three, we provide digital health. And also, if you see in deep, so we can classify like the entire work into three major categories. One is a wearable, next one is a nearable, and third one is a point of care devices. So from the name, you can able to understand that wearable, like a smartwatch or patches that have been attached to the body. The next one is called nearable. So these devices, they don't have to attach to the body, but they will sit along with you in the room so that it can able to measure your details. Like it may be like smart mattresses kind of applications. And third one is a point of care devices. So most of them know about these devices after COVID, after the pandemic. So it's like a rat test, which can empower us to test these devices in home settings, and we can come to the solutions. If you go further in detail, these are some of the technologies we're currently working on. We have been worked. The first one is called smart mattresses for aged care. So where we are developing a smart mattress, like a flexible pressure sensor embedded smart mattress, so that can able to measure the presence, position, and fall detection of aged care people. We also focus on assistive technology for aged care. Apart from this, we are also working on like smart goggles for chronic eye disease. So where we are trying to develop a smart goggles that can help us to solve the dry eyes disease. Apart from this, we work for like battery-free wearables for remote areas. So where we are trying to develop a wearable devices that can be majorly helpful for like people who are living in like remote and rural areas, and point of care devices similar to battery-free wearable. Apart from this, we also focus on wearable skin temperature, ECG, EMG, and a lot of other devices as well. Yeah. So then I would like to focus on like a few examples which our group is working on. The first one is a wearable ECG device. So usually you know like what is ECG. So it's so whenever your heart pumps, it generates an electrical impulse that is like transmitted throughout the body through the blood medium. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to measure these tiny potentials from the body to understand the activities of the heart. So usually how it does is like we use the electrocardiogram machine. So that will be hospital. So what they do is like they attach these 12 electrodes across the body. So you can see the image in the slide. So the patient has to be very stable. So there should not be any movement. Also, it requires like skin preparation. So because like the place where they're going to attach the electrode should be very clean, and it also needs a technician. And the main problem is we have to visit to hospital and labs for doing this measurement. Also, the main problem with this kind of measurement is they use the wet electrode, which uses like a conductive gel. So once the conductive gel like decays, then the noise to ratio signal will be not good. So then the quality of the signal also will get decay. So that's the main problem with the wet electrode. Also, this is like not reusable. So what we are trying to do is the main address the research gap is we are trying to develop a dry electrode which can be like a reusable, and it can be attached on the chest of the patient. So it doesn't also require the patient to be visit like hospital and labs, which can able to do like pre-diagnosis in the home settings. Also, it comes with the wireless model so that we can able to load all the data in the wireless in the cloud. So this is the main thing we worked on. And if you see the classification of dry electrodes, there's a different type of dry electrodes available. Each one has its own advantage and disadvantage. But we focus more on like conductive polymer electrodes. So if you take the capacitive electrode, it's easy to fabricate, but the problem is the signal quality. Also, if you go for invasive microneedle electrode, that signal quality is good, but the problem is it is like invasive. And the third one is textile electrode. So this one has a very good easy, that's conformable and easy to attach to the body, but the problem is it don't have that much high quality signals. So we focus on working on conductive polymer electrodes, and this fabrication steps for developing a gold electrodes on a flexible substrate. So usually what we do is like we use like lithographic technique. So initially we prepare the wafer. So the wafer is like, for example, like I came to know there is a lot of undergraduate students. So for you, like if you think of like silicon wafer, it like a solid rigid substrate, maybe like a metal piece. So what we are trying to do, why we are using the silicon is, we are trying to use the silicon to hold the polymer flexible substrate, because like it's very difficult to use the flexible substrate as it is doing for the full fabrication process. So we need a rigid medium to hold it firmly. So what we did is like we attach the polymer substrate to the silicon, then we just use the spin coat on top of the photoresist and we spin coated on top of it. Then we use the maskless aligner, so which can able to develop the pattern like according to your design. Then finally we do the development, and after the development we do the metal deposition. So we usually use like gold, because like compared to silver, the gold has better stability and it won't oxidize that much. So we prefer to go with a metal deposition. And once we deposit the gold, the thickness of gold is like very thin. It's like 300 nanometer. It's less than thickness of air. So then we also do the lift off, and finally we peel off the flexible substrate from the rigid silicon. So the step 8 shows the flexible gold electrodes developed fabricated on the flexible substrate. And this is one of the wearable ECG device we also developed. We tried different designs, and this is one of the design we developed. So serpentine patterns, we mostly prefer to go with serpentine patterns. The reason is whenever like so when the person is wearing the wearable ECG device, so there should be some movement across the body. So whenever like the movement is happening, so the electrode also has to move along with the body. So that's the main reason for wearable ECG devices. And this is one of the videos shows the wearable device that we developed in the clean room. So you can see it is developed on a flexible PDMS substrate. The gold is deposited on top of it. So you can see how flexible and conformable these devices. The total area of this device is 4 centimeters square. And this is the wearable ECG device you can see here. So this image shows.
That's the only thing.
So this image shows that the gold electrode is on top of the polymer substrate. In backside of polymer substrate, we have the flexible electronic model. On top of it, we have the dressing patch. So everything goes as a single device. So the person can attach it on a body and they can able to measure all the details. And we also tested these devices under different conditions. So one is like sitting down, lying down, also standing. Also, we try to do like different stimuli, like ideal physical stimuli, mental stimuli. Also, we are trying to do mental plus physical stimuli. We did all of them, and we found that our results are like pretty much similar to the gold standard one, which they currently use in labs and hospitals. And this work have been like patented. Also, it's published. It's a published work. So apart from this, the next example I would like to share with you is the battery-free wearables. So this one works completely based on like NFC. So if you want to understand this technology clearly, it works similar to our credit card and debit card. So whenever you tap your card, it gets communicated. The reader it gets communicated with the reader. Then it will transmit the data. So whenever you're tapping your card in a grocery shop, that will happen. The same technology we are using here. So we also call this technology as like on-demand technology, because like it won't do continuous monitoring, but it do like demand monitoring. Whenever you want to measure, for example, say like every 4 hours or every 2 hours, once you have to measure this detail, you can just tap your mobile phone on top of the patch so that you can get all the data and readings there. And this is one of the developed patch. And this video shows this is a temperature sensor which we developed on the patch, and it shows the functionality you can see here. So we just tap the mobile phone on top of that one, and it starts. These are hexadecimal value which is correlated to the temperature of the device. So we're just pouring the hot water on top of into the cup. So once we pour the hot water, the temperature of the cup will increases, so that sensor will gather all the data. So you can see here. So it start decreasing now. From 3100, it start decreasing. At some point, it will get stable. So once it get like stabilized reading, it will get stable. So it keep on like changing. You can see the changes from there. And finally, it gets stable at the point. So we have to convert this hexadecimal value into correlating corresponding temperature values. And the next example, which I like to share with you, is the wearable optical sensors. So the one of the example we developed is the optical glucometer, which use like optical sensors to measure the glucose concentration from the body. So initially, like how they process the biomarker is like they collect the blood and they do like data analysis, and finally they will correlate, they make some correlation and finally give the outcome. Either the diabetes sugar level is like high, low, or medium. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to replicate those technology with the help of like optical sensors like LEDs and photodiodes. So the miniature one. So usually like we can try in two different methods. One is transmission, another one is reflection. If it is transmission, then both LED and photodiode will be in the different plane opposite to each other. But in the reflection mode, all the LEDs photodiode will be in the same plane. It usually based on the reflection principle. So the main problem with the transmission mode is we can able to use this transmission mode only in earlobe, finger, and feet. But in reflection mode, we can use in like most part of the body. So that's why we prefer to go with reflection mode always. Also, we use like 0402 dimensions, which is like 1 mm cross 0.5 mm. So you can see how tiny these devices are. So it's very difficult to fabricate as well. So this is one of the another example which I like to share with you. So diabetes, it's one of the deadliest disease in the world, not only in Australia, in all over the world. So a lot of people have been diagnosed living with diabetes, also diagnosed each year, also like in high risk. So what they're trying to do is like they have the optical glucometer now. So sorry, they have the portable glucometer, which will help us to measure the glucose content in the home. But the problem is it is invasive. So what they have to do is they have to use the needle to finger prick and they have to take the blood to measure the glucose concentration. So what we are trying to do, so that one will be okay for adult, but if you think of like children's and aged care people, then it will be very difficult to get blood from this finger prick test. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop an optical glucometer that can able to measure the concentration of glucose non-invasively, like just placing your finger on top of the LEDs. So it can able to measure the data. It can able to measure all the glucose concentration. This is the developed batch. It comes with the Bluetooth module so that it can able to pair up with a mobile phone and it can transmit all the data. So this is some of the results regarding to optical glucometer. So we can tested for like normal level, hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia. So our devices can able to identify perfectly with all the concentration. Also, we did some selectivity test and we got very good results compared to other mixtures as well. And finally, I like to talk about the industry project. So the translation project, which we have done from the scratch to product, which is going to be in the market soon. The main thing is called like a sleep. We are working with a company called Sleep Tide. So we're developing a smart aged care mattresses. So what they do, so currently how it works is like, so the people who are living in aged care homes. So what they do is like the carer, they have to go to each room individually to monitor them. So whether this person is on the bed or not, whether they fell down from the bed or not. So they have to do like individually. But the problem is like it is not the right way to use the carer time. It's very inefficient. So what we also it can able to, it takes a lot of time to go each room to individually monitor them. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to develop a smart mattresses which can help us to get all the data from the individuals, and it will display in the dashboard. And you can see here, this is a mattress we have developed, and this is a dashboard. In the dashboard, you can see like all the beds displayed here with the name of the individual. So if something goes wrong, for example, if the aged care elderly population, people like getting out of the bed for using the washroom and he's forgot to come back to the bed, so then it triggers the alarm in the set time. For example, you say like 5 minutes for the person called like X1. The person X1 didn't come back to the bed within 5 minutes. Then the alarm will trigger so that the aged care, the carer can go to the particular room and check them individually. And these are some of the flexible sensors we printed. So these are like pressure sensors with the connecting lines is printed on the using the screen printer technology, and we embedded those sensors under the mattress cover. It comes with the wireless switch module, the PCB1, so that it can able to measure.
Have to go to discuss and then you have to go to duplicate.
It can able to measure continuously the presence, position, and fall detection of the aged care people. And finally, I'm saying about the challenges and future perspective in terms of wearable. So there's three main things. One is the integrated sensor design challenges, battery-free wireless devices. So if you think of the integrated sensor design, so currently we are developing wearables. So wearable, we can develop like a lot of wearable, but if you're developing like each wearable for single wearable for each disease, then we have to attach wearables all over the body. So what we should try to do is we have to try to develop like multi-sensor wearables, so multimodal or like multiple wearability sensors, which can able to measure like different biomarkers from the body, so that the single patch can able to measure the ECG, temperature, EMG, EEG, also pH. So that is the best design, so that we can reduce the number of wearables. Also, it reduces the e-waste as well. So focusing on developing wearable, we should not like contribute to e-waste. And the main design challenges is like we have to make this wearable as small as possible. So we have to also like eye accuracy, eye sensitivity. So we have to use like sensitive materials. Also, we have to use like low power components. The main reason is power consumption. So either if you're using a wearable like a replaceable battery or rechargeable battery, at some point that should be changed. So if you use like low power component, then it will increase the lifetime of the battery. So those are the design challenges that we should focus. And third one is the battery-free wireless device. As I mentioned, like the major problem in wearable is like power. So what we have to try to do is we should use like energy harvesting designs using like piezoelectric materials or like other materials, so which can able to harvest the energy from the environment. Also, it can able to harvest energy from the body heat. So that what it can do is can store all the data. So it can able to continuously power the wearables. Yeah, and these are the things. And finally, thank you all for your patience. I think because of short time, I couldn't able to go in detail. But if you think any of our work is interesting, and if you want to develop some collaboration or you want to know more about this technology, always feel free to contact me. Happy to have a chat with you all. Yeah, thank you. If you have any questions, I'm open to take questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Dhanbalan. So, any questions from the audience? Okay, so thanks so much, Professor Dhanbalan, for making yourself available for this talk. So we'll be having a virtual felicitation ceremony for you, since you are sitting like halfway across the world. So please, all of you join me in like thanking Professor Dhanbalan for giving this wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Professor Dhanbalan.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Ponalagu ma'am, for giving this opportunity to share our research work with young fellows. Thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So I think we'll be taking a very small tea break. After that, we'll reconvene with the next speaker, Professor Raghunathan from ISC. So all of you, please join for tea, and we'll be reassemble very short.
చెక్ చేసుకోవాలి. ఉంది నెక్స్ట్ స్లైడ్ అది మినీ చేసుకోండి.
Priyanka.
డ్రైవ్ గానే అలా ఇలా ఏది మనకు తెలియదు కదా. సంకేత్ సార్ ఒక్క నిమిషం. But she gave me but I could not. Where is the Sanket sir hiding? She gave me this one.
MMNA is deviate.
That one only. ఇదేనా
ఇది తెలియదు మరి నాకు.
సంకేత్ సార్ link.
సంకేత్ సార్ ఆ సంకేత్ సార్ పేరు ఉందా? సంకేత్ సార్ రైట్.
Ah, 1 minute. Okay.
సార్ సంకేత్ సార్ ఆల్రెడీ నోట్ చేసావా? సంకేత్ సార్
ఇదేనా ఒకటి చూసుకోండి. రెండు అయితే ఒక ఆమె ఐఎంఎం సంథింగ్ అన్నారు.
ఎంఎంఎన్ఈ ఎంఎంఎన్ఈ అంటే సంకేత్ సార్.
కన్ఫర్మ్ టోటల్
సంకేత్ సార్ ఎంఎంఎన్ఈ అని ఉంది అదేనా? శ్రీకాంత్ ఎంఎంఎన్ఈ అని ఉంది కింద.
టోటల్ 59 pages. ఓకే నెక్స్ట్ వరుణ్ సార్
వరుణ్ సార్ది ఫస్ట్. వరుణ్ సార్ది
ఎలక్ట్రైట్స్ వరుణ్ సార్.
వరుణ్ సార్.
నెక్స్ట్ ఇంకోటి ఇది ఎవరిది? ఇది
వెంకటేష్.
వరుణ్ తర్వాత వెంకటేష్.
వెంకటేష్ తర్వాత సంకేత్ సార్. లాస్ట్ లో సంకేత్ సార్.
లో పవర్ ఎంఎన్సి.
Hello. Yes, ma'am.
ఇదేంది ఇట్లుంది?
Okay. అవును మ్యామ్. బిల్ అప్డేట్ అవ్వద్దా?
పేరు మారుస్తావా ఉంచేస్తావు లోపల
ఉండనియండి. మీకు క్లారిటీ ఉంటే అంతే.
ఓకే మ్యామ్.
జస్ట్ 1 minute.
ఓకే. అవునవును, రీసెంట్గా అయింది.
అది ఎలా కిందకి వెళ్తుంది దీని మీద నాకు
ఓకే.
వెళ్ళదు అది. ఇంకా ఓపెన్ అవుతుంది, ఎక్స్పాండ్ అవుతుంది.
ఓకే. ఓకే మ్యామ్. అంటే నేను మీటర్.
అది ఏం చేస్తారు మీరు
ఓకే.
స్క్రీన్
షూర్. ఏమి ఏమి ఎవరిది?
ఇది వెంకటేష్
వెంకటేష్ ఇప్పుడు సెకండ్.
వెంకటేష్ సెకండ్, ఫస్ట్ వరుణ్, తర్వాత వెంకటేష్, తర్వాత ఎంఎంఎన్ఈ.
ఫస్ట్ వరుణ్, ఇది తర్వాత వెంకటేష్, తర్వాత సంఖ్యలు.
ఓకే
రాసుకో.
అన్ని కింద ఉన్నాయి, డెస్క్టాప్ ఉన్నాయి. ఇది వరుణ్,
వెంకటేష్
వెంకటేష్. ఇది వరుణ్,
వరుణ్.
ఇది సంకేత్.
ఎంఎంఎన్ఈ
ఓకే.
అంతే.
సో నువ్వు పీపీటీలో ఫస్ట్ పని చేయాలి.
వరుణ్ చేయాలి.
అదే మన ఇది కాదు ఇది ఫిల్టర్స్ లేకపోతే బిట్స్ వీడియోలో ప్లే చేయాలి. బ్యాక్డ్రాప్ ఒకటే పెట్టండి. ఇది కాదు మామూలుది బ్యానర్ హైదరాబాద్ ఇది కూడా సెన్సర్స్ ఇది. సో ఎన్నో పెట్టాలి. అది కాదనుకుంటే రెండు ఉంటుంది. ఇది కూడా కాదు. డౌన్లోడ్స్ లేదు. ఇది పెట్టి నెక్స్ట్ స్లైడ్
ఒకసారి ఇట్లా ఉన్నాడా డూప్లికేట్ పెడితే ఫుల్ స్క్రీన్ వస్తుంది.
Let's get started.
స్టార్ట్ నా
First slides are there.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the session after a small tea break. Now it is our pleasure to welcome Mr. Varun Rathnathan, Associate Professor at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. His research spans nonlinear optics, integrated photonics, and resonant metasurfaces, contributing significantly to advanced sensing and photonic technologies. Let us warmly welcome Professor Varun Rathnathan for his talk on dielectric metasurfaces for sensing and nonlinear optics. We welcome you, sir.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Hope you are able to hear me at the back. Are you able to hear me? Oh, very good.
Here is
Okay. So, what I'll be talking about today is optical metasurfaces. I'll describe what that is and also give you the kind of applications where this is used for. Specifically, I'll talk about sensing applications since the workshop here, the theme of it is going to be in sensing. So, I'll focus on that. And also, I'll talk about some work we are doing in converting some of these sensing signals to different wavelengths through frequency conversion type processes. Before I begin, I would like to thank the organizers, especially Professor Ponalagus, for the invitation to come here and give a talk. It's always a pleasure to be here in BITS. I'm an alumni of BITS Pilani, so I take great pride in coming here and talking about some of my work. And a lot of what I do, the background of it is based on what I learned in BITS, so I'm always grateful for that as well. Excellent.
You can change.
Okay. So this is what I have planned for this talk. I'll keep it to maybe around 35-40 minutes. So what I plan to do, I'll give you a basic introduction to optical sensing techniques. I see a lot of the work here in this workshop are more on electronic sensing. So for my part, I'll talk a bit about optical sensing, what are the different sensing modalities and so on. And what is the cutting edge in this field? One of the key areas is how do you improve sensitivity? And that's where these kind of interesting material platforms like metasurfaces and all get used. And then I'll move on to talking about 3 pieces of research. This spans almost like 6-7 years kind of time duration. My first PhD student, she worked on silicon nitride resonance structures for fluorescence enhancement. More recently, maybe the 5th or 6th student, he worked on infrared resonant metasurfaces for IR absorption. And more recently, we've been looking at frequency conversion as well. So one by one, I'll try to cover each of these. If there are any questions, do stop me in between, or we can also take questions at the end. Right, so moving on to the first piece, just a basic introduction to optical sensing. So if you want to understand any optical processes, right, let's take a step back and then try to understand optics the way it occurs in our day-to-day life, you come across a lot of different phenomena, right? Light refracts, right? A good example of this is like a spoon I keep in a glass, water glass. It tends to refract, and then you see these kind of break in the spoon, for example. Light reflects off surfaces, light can be dispersed out of prisms, light can be diffract, and then the effect of that, like light starts spreading out of tight apertures. I can also have interference effects and all that. Right? All these are effects we are familiar with, some of them to a larger extent, maybe diffraction, interference, not so quite often in a day-to-day life. But each of these are very important, right? Optical effects which occur in nature. And each of them is useful for sensing applications as well, right? If, for example, if I'm looking at a target, right, this could be, for example, some explosive or something. Remotely, I'll be able to shoot laser beams to it, look at the reflected signals, for example, and then understand what the composition is going to be. If I want to delve a little bit more, understand the molecular composition of whatever is there in the target, then I can disperse light, right, in a prism or a grating or any of those structures. When I separate the colors out, I'll be able to understand what are the different frequencies which are present, and from that try to decipher what this target molecule is and all that, right? So whatever optics we deal with in day-to-day life has very practical usage when we talk about sensing applications. Now, if you want to understand how light works, right, this is a little bit of math, maybe the only math I will have in my slide, right? How does light interact with material? The way to understand that, right, is based on Maxwell's equations, or more, if you understand in terms of the constitutive relationships, then I have a displacement, which is essentially the overall response of the medium, which is dependent on the incident electric field, and how the material response is the polarization, right? So coming from an electrical engineering background, we take a signals and systems approach to this, and then we denote the polarization as a function of space and time as a convolution integral between the incident electric field and the response of the medium, which is the susceptibility of the medium, right? I can also write it in frequency domains. At any frequency omega, the response is going to be the product of the susceptibility and the electric field, all represented in frequency and wave vector space, right? So this is the way materials respond. And when I'm doing any sensing, I'm trying to understand the chi1 or this response of the medium, and from that try to decipher what material it is basically, right? Is it something which has some fingerprint which I want to sense, and based on that, I will want to see whether it's a good material or a bad material and so on. Right? So at the heart of any of these linear optical processes we are interested in is going to be this kind of a math. But more importantly, what we are trying to probe, right, is essentially the first order response, the type 1 response of the medium, which can be related to its refractive index. It can also be related to its absorption, basically. Right? That's what I'm trying to map by doing any sensing techniques or spectroscopy techniques. Right? So then moving on to a bit more details about optical techniques which are used for sensing applications. What am I really interested in? I'm interested in measuring changes in the optical property of the material in the presence of an analyte of interest. Right? This is a good example where light is being passed through some structure. It could be a waveguide, it could be just two plates which are highly reflective. Then I put some antibodies here where proteins come and attach, for example, as simple as that. Then the structure, the stop surface is being modified, and I would like to sense that by using light. Right? So where this is good for is that I'll be able to do concentration estimation. I can know how much concentration got attached to the surface. I can do reaction monitoring. Did something get attached? Did something undergo a change? Those kind of things can also be monitored by using these kind of sensors. Then I can do molecular, like single molecule detection can be done. This is particularly useful if I'm doing, an example of this could be like if I'm doing DNA sequencing, I want to know the different RT, the different nucleotides which are aligned. So then if I want to do that, I can come up with a platform like this where things get attached or some reaction happens. Based on that, I'll be able to map the nucleotide, for example. So all these are useful applications or sensing applications for which having optical techniques like the one I have described will be very useful. What are the different modalities which are available? That's also listed here. I'll explain each of them in my subsequent slides. Like we can look at refractive index sensing, right? A change in the refractive index can be sensed. I can look at absorption sensing. A change in the light absorption properties can be sensed. I can also look at fluorescence sensing, where I'm interested in essentially looking at fluorescence signatures coming from the molecules of interest. Then there are also processes like which look at the vibrational modes and all that, which are called as Raman-based sensing techniques. So broadly, I've classified. There are many other sensing techniques. I may have probably left out a billion other techniques, but that doesn't matter. Right? These are kind of broadly the techniques which people deal with whenever we are trying to build an optical sensor. How do each of them work? If you want to understand this, like I've listed out each of them separately, right? When I'm looking at refractive index sensing, what I'm interested in is to look at the change in refractive index of the optical device in the presence of the analyte of interest, basically, right? When I look at refractive index sensing, the refractive index can be related to the phase of light, right? When light passes through a denser medium, it will be delayed more. When it passes through a rarer medium, it will go faster, right? So the phase of light is being changed by the refractive index, and that's what I want to sense. The way I would do this is based on what is known as interferometry, which is shown here. I split light into two parts. There is a reference part and there is a measuring part where I have molecules of interest. If there is a phase change, then when I put back the light together, the intensity will change basically. This is an interferometer, specifically it's a Mach-Zehnder interferometer. So this is a popular way to sense refractive index as an intensity change in the interferometer. Another way to do this is also I can come up with other resonance structures. This is a ring resonator type structure. If molecules come and attach, the resonance spectra of this will shift because the resonance condition changes because locally refractive index is changing. Right? So this is a popular way to do sensing. It's been used to build commercial sensing devices as well. Moving on, I can also have absorption-based sensing, which is little different from the refractive index sensing, in that I'm looking at the imaginary part of the susceptibility, right? And then I look at the absorption, what wavelengths are absorbed or what wavelengths are transmitted. The way I would do it in a crude way is like I have a cell, I fill it with certain chemicals, I pass light through, I look at what is coming out, and then I look at the spectrum of that. And then, for example, a spectrum of some of these gaseous species can look something like this, where they have characteristic absorption in the infrared region, for example. Like CO2 has a characteristic absorption around the 600 wave number. Water has characteristic absorption in the 3000 wave number, and so on. Right? If I'm able to look at the spectrum, for example, of the light passing through, I'll be able to map out the characteristic spectrum. And what you see here is that each of these spectra are unique, right? The CO2 is very distinct from methane, for example, or CO2 is very different from water. So this is the property I want to leverage to identify what compound it is, basically. Is it CO2? Is it water? Is it an explosive? So for doing any of that, I want to do absorption-based sensing, where light passes through and then I resolve them into different colors. The third technique, which is more popular for biological applications, is what is known as fluorescence, where I excite fluorophores to an excited state and they emit light like a fluorescent signal, basically. So this is an example where different molecules are filled up in these bottles. I shine light from the backside. Each of them absorbs and emits at a different wavelength, and that's why you see all these different colors coming out of this, basically. So this is for liquids, but now I can extend the same idea and then tag cells, for example, with specific fluorophores. So this is an example where cells have been attached with fluorophores. When I shine light, this will emit light which are of different colors. So where this is useful is that I can put different tags for different parts of the cell. For example, nucleus is stained with a particular stain like that, for example. The green is a different stain. The red is a different stain. They stain different organelles in the tissue, in the cells, basically. And then different parts of it light up. So this is a very popular way to do biological imaging by using fluorescence as the sensing mechanism. Lastly, we will also talk about Raman scattering. Being in India, we are always grateful for the work of Raman, where he figured out that when I excite molecules with light, I'll be able to look at the characteristic vibrational modes of these molecules, and that can be probed as a scattering signature, a Stokes or an anti-Stokes scattering. Right? At the heart of it, the physics of it is very similar to the infrared absorption I talked about earlier. But again, you get characteristic fingerprint in their spectrum, right? When I resolve the spectrum of whatever is scattered, I'll be able to figure out what molecule it is, right? This is an example of paracetamol, right? The one we take for headache tablet. It has its own characteristic Raman spectra. I'll be able to map basically, right? So these four techniques are very popular and routinely used in practical uses, basically, not only in labs, but this is also used in the field, right? I can build handheld sensors, which I can shine and then look at reflected signals, identify molecules and all that. So all these techniques are extremely popular if you at all do any form of optical sensing. Moving on, what is the state of the art in these kind of techniques, right? When I'm trying to build an optical sensor, there are different things I worry about, right? Two of them are of importance here, which I have listed out. One is like what is called a specificity, right? How specific is my sensor to what I'm trying to detect, right? If I'm trying to pick certain signatures, like certain molecules, I want to detect only that. I don't want to detect anything else, right? I want to have the specificity to detect specific molecules. How do I do that? That's where these techniques like Raman or labeling with certain fluorophores, certain particular regions and all come in useful, right? This is very, very powerful technique in the sense that now I not only get some signal, but I know exactly where that signal came from, right? That capability is very important to have. The next part of it is what is known as sensitivity, right? Any sensor, whether you build an electronic sensor or an optical sensor, a good quality for it is to have will be to detect as small a sample volume as possible, preferably like a single molecule. If I can detect a single molecule of what I'm trying to detect, that will be the ultimate in terms of the sensitivity I can have. But often I don't have the capability to do that because I'll be overwhelmed by the noise, right? The background signals may be very strong, the fluctuations will be very strong, that I may not have the capability to detect a single molecule. But in any case, that's the target. Eventual goal is to go towards a single molecule sensing capability. But what do we do, right? How do we improve sensitivity? Coming up with better techniques to do the sensing is very important. By that I mean your sensor has to be that much more sensitive to pick up like small changes in the molecular concentration should result in large changes in the optical signal, right? That's what I'm looking for, right? How do I achieve this? A good way to do this will be to introduce some form of spectral selectivity to my sensor in a way that when a small molecule or there is a change in the molecular concentration, the spectral selectivity shifts significantly, right? So that's where a lot of the field is headed. When people are looking at how do I increase the resonance response or the spectral selectivity of my sensor, it's an important area of research when you try to build optical sensors, right? Here, I've tried to list out few examples of how this is done. The popular ways to do this, if I'm looking at Raman scattering, the popular way to improve sensitivity is by using metal nanoparticles or structured surfaces, where essentially I can create local hotspots where electric field is increased significantly. And because of that, my Raman signal will be increased significantly, right? The particular example, what I show here is what is known as surface enhanced Raman scattering or SEARCH, which is a very popular way to enhance the sensitivity in Raman, right? So this is an example where there are two gold dumbbells. Locally, I create a hotspot with very high, extremely, by very high, I mean like 10 power 4 or 10 power 5 enhancement in field strength. And I want to leverage that to enhance the Raman signal from a small molecule which is placed inside, right? So this is a very popular way to do Raman. There are commercial, like I can buy substrates which have these kind of fancy patterns, which I can use, functionalize them with molecules and then study them in a Raman spectrometer setup and all that. It's very popular tech. Then what are the other ways to do this? I can build resonance structures where locally field is enhanced, right? That is the method. Then how do I enhance fields locally? Another way to do this will be to create resonance structures in the form of ring resonator, for example, right? So this is a ring resonator where certain wavelengths of light will resonantly enhance within the ring, and I can create a huge enhancement in field strength, right? So this is one structure. On resonance, it creates a 4 times enhancement in field strength. So what it could translate is that if I'm looking at absorption, that can be enhanced roughly by 4 square, like 16 times enhancement is possible. Similarly, I can play with the quality factor of these resonators and then improve the performance that much more better, basically. The field enhancements I can get roughly scales quadratically with the quality factor. Higher the quality factor, stronger the field enhancement, and correspondingly, I can enhance any of the processes I described. I can enhance refractive index sensing, I can enhance absorption sensing, Raman scattering, fluorescence. All of those processes can be enhanced by just locally playing with the field strength. Increase the field, increase the sensitivity of all those processes. So that's where That's the game we are also playing, where we look at alternate ways to enhance resonances. One of the ways we do this is by using structures. Like I can pattern structures on a substrate which locally enhance the field. Right? This is one example I'm showing, but I'll describe a lot more in my subsequent slide, where I can have structures like gratings which are arranged both in the horizontal and the vertical direction. These are carefully designed to create resonances such that a strong electric field is being seen by the molecule of interest. Right? This is a simulated electric field profile for some of these structures, where I can get about 20 times enhancement in the electric field. And what that translates to is a significant enhancement in the sensing modality, basically. That's the idea. Right? So the whole idea of improving sensitivity in these kind of sensor platforms is to go for structures which enhance the field and correspondingly leverage that field enhancement by putting molecules on the spots where field is enhanced, and then look at the optical processes for those kind of resonance structures. Right? And what we are doing here in this field is to look for these kind of surface engineered structures called as meta surfaces, functionalize them, look for optical processes, and so on. So that concludes my first part of the talk, describing to you what are the different sensing techniques, what is the state of the art, and so on. I'll slowly move on to the kind of structures we are looking at. Maybe quickly I'll cover this. I'll talk about optical meta surfaces, what does it mean, and so on. Why is it a good platform for doing sensing? Right? So if I want to tell you what an optical meta surface is, I need to take a step back. You need to understand what is known as light scattering from some of these particles, right? These are two examples of light scattering from particles. The first one is this famous cup, which is called as this Lycurgus cup, which is there in the British Museum. The second one is a famous cathedral in Spain, right? What they have in common is the way they scatter light, basically, right? If you see this demon, which is there in this glass, when I shine light from outside, it looks green in color. When I put the light source inside, it looks red in color, right? So the light scattering is strongly influenced by whatever is there on the wall of the cup, basically. And its spectral response is very different. Similarly, if you look at this church window, what you see here are these glasses which are stained, right? The staining is such that when sunlight passes through it, it creates these kind of vibrant colors on the walls and ceilings and all that, right? If you look at what is really happening here, there are actually particles, nanoparticles of either dielectrics or metals which scatter light, right? And that scattering at that micron scale or nanoscale is what gives rise to all these colors and these phenomena, whatever is seen here, right? These kind of church windows are all very famous, right? In Europe, you find a lot of these old churches with all these fancy colors. At the heart of them, people figured out that I can grind metals, put them inside glass to create these kind of colors like way back, right? It's well known for ages now. And if you look at it, at the heart of it is like some interesting light scattering phenomenon. Similarly, if you look at paints, right, there are lots of new paints coming up. Like if you look at IPL, for example, Dhoni comes for an ad for IPL, right, for paints. I'm sure Dhoni comes with Zebra introducing the next latest in the paint, right? At the heart of it are what happens is titanium nanoparticles, right? Titanium is like a broadband scatterer. If I can play with its composition and structure, I can get richer colors of white and so on, right? At the heart of developing better paints is to come up with better nanoparticles which can be coated on the walls, basically, right? So light scattering is not something which is very exotic. It's something which we see in our day-to-day life as well, right? If you want to dwell a little bit and understand how light scattering works in particles, we need to understand the particle size relative to the wavelength of light, right? Rayleigh scattering is a popular phenomenon. When particle size is very small when compared to wavelength, you get these kind of isotropic scattering phenomenon, right? Rayleigh scattering is very popular, like why is the sky blue, like because there is preferential scattering in the blue wavelengths and all that. Most of it are particle sizes which are very small, which scatter light, and this is very well known. But now when the particle size increases, it creates very interesting phenomenon, right? It creates more spectral selectivity to the scattering. It also gives it more directionality, right? When I tell you spectral selectivity, it means certain wavelengths are reflected more or transmitted more when compared to the other. And then what we see, there is more forward scattering versus more backward scattering and all that. Okay? This is taken from a paper where they look at really tiny objects like silicon particles, for example, where if I look at different particle sizes, its scattering colors look very different. Particles of the smaller colors tend to scatter blue more. the larger ones tend to scatter red more, right? So the scattering phenomenon in these objects is strongly influenced by its diameter and its material composition. So then if you want to dwell a little bit more and try to understand the phenomenon, these two videos can you play?
You can play just a minute.
I don't know how to play. If you can play it then. So here I've shown you a simple simulation of a metallic object which is scattering light. And what you find is that the light gets scattered. Go back and play again. Thank you. So what you see here is the field kind of hugs the surface and propagates. You create strong field concentration on the edges of this particle, and that's what scatters light, and it creates local hotspots where light is enhanced. Can you play the second one? The same thing I show for a silicon instead of a gold particle. What you find is that light is confined within the structure. It resonates within the structure and radiates out. But both have some common phenomenon in the sense that light is being enhanced at certain wavelengths, and where light is enhanced is very different. Light is enhanced significantly on the edges for the metal object, while light is enhanced significantly inside for the dielectric object. This has very important consequence when you look at light scattering from these particles. I've listed them out here, but I will not spend too much time on this. But one key property which is useful for sensing is this field enhancement. Okay? How much electric field enhancement do I get in these structures? I get very high enhancements in metallic objects because of the local hotspots. The enhancement may be low, but then it's sustained for a longer time. Right? You can see that by the time this is gone, this is still ringing back and forth, right? So you can see that the quality of these resonances are much more better, that I don't lose that light effectively. So whatever the hot spots which I don't get here is compensated by the quality of the resonance I can achieve in the dielectric objects. The other important thing for sensing applications is these kind of structures need to withstand light. Metal particles are generally not good at withstanding light. They tend to get damaged easily, while dielectrics have high damage thresholds and all that, right? So these are kind of the building blocks which will be used to put together a sensor where I'm going to use either a metallic object for surface enhanced Raman scattering, for example, or dielectric objects for fluorescence enhancement, right? I'm just saying two examples. But I can use the fact that the field is kind of enhanced locally to put analytes of interest, and then you use them for sensing application, basically. That's the idea. Right? How do you understand this? A bit more details. One can look at the scattering spectra. The scattering spectra tells you characteristic modes which resemble electric dipoles, magnetic dipoles, and all that. I'll skip in the interest of time, but then there are interesting scattering effects which can be created within these structures, which can be leveraged to locally enhance the field. Wherever you see peaks here, those are the locations where field is going to be enhanced. Those are the wavelengths which are good for building a useful sensor. I can also create voids where light gets concentrated. This can be a bit counterintuitive because often light gets scattered from solid objects, but I'm telling you light can be scattered by a hole as well, right? So when I have arrays of holes, we can also see interesting scattering patterns which come out of them. This was recently published, which was called as what are known as V voids, scattering from voids basically, right? Again, you can create very rich colors from the scattering phenomenon. You can also locally enhance fields, which can be used for sensing applications. Why this is advantageous is that if I want to fill these holes with liquid, for example, I'll be able to do that easily by filling this hole, right? Where this is good, right? Another more exotic application is to create structural colors where playing with the size of the holes, the scattering phenomenon will give rich colors which can resemble certain patterns. For example, this is a famous painting in a museum in Germany. They have essentially reproduced the same painting by using an array of these holes arranged properly. They have carefully patterned it to create the same richness in colors, but except that this is a microscopic object when compared to this kind of macroscopic painting, right? So you can see that I can use this phenomenon to scatter light in a very interesting way, right? So moving on, I can now put these structures together to form an array, right? That's where we go from individual meta atoms to meta surface, a surface with very interesting properties, right? So when I try to align these individual scatterers into an array, I can get scattering from each of these individual particles, and in the far field, I get an overall scattering which is influenced by what is happening to the local scatterer.
So I can build arrays of these where these effects are being amplified because of what is happening in the neighborhood because of nearest neighbor interactions. Right? I use this, for example, let me talk about this. So this is not something new, right? Like the kind of arrays what we have here is not a fairly new phenomenon. It's already known in the past, right? If you look at your microwave oven, if you at all cook any food in the microwave oven, you find that there is this mesh pattern, what you see in the microwave oven. Have you seen a microwave oven before? Have you seen the wall of the microwave? You see this kind of hexagonal pattern, right? This is shown as a mesh, but you also get hexagonal patterns. What is the purpose of that pattern? The purpose of that pattern is to reflect the microwave frequency into the oven, so that the food cooks efficiently. Right? At the same time, the person standing outside should not be cooked, right? So then the mesh will protect by reflecting the microwave inside, not transmitting anything outside, right? At the heart of it, right, if you look at the individual structures, they are very small when compared to the wavelength of the microwave, right? But the purpose of that is like a meta surface, which is resonant, which reflects the microwave frequency inside the oven, not passing it through, right? So this is whatever I'm describing here, right? What I talked about initially was an individual meta atom. Now you arrange it into an array to form a meta surface to create an overall composite effect, for example, reflecting frequencies or transmitting frequencies and all that, right? Why this is new in optics, this field has taken up over the last 10-15 years. The reason is advancements in fabrication tools, right? So whatever I showed in microwave, I can probably take it to a machine shop and get it made. But when I talk about optical frequencies, the wavelength is extremely small. Then if I'm talking about sub-wavelength structures at optical frequencies, they are extremely small, right? So then I need to have very good tools to do the fabrication, and that's what has really enabled this field, right? There are very good e-beam lithography tools because one of the areas is this printed sensors, right? So I thought I'll focus a bit on the fabrication techniques as well. You have these e-beam lithography tools which can be used to precisely fabricate structures. There are also these stepper lithography tools which are available which is routinely used in all these electronic IC fabrication. There are also more advanced fabrication techniques like nano stencil. I can use polymer beads as a stencil and then kind of get copies of this at the bottom.
Don't press anything in one button.
Sorry?
Okay. Don't press anything, just use slider.
Okay. Then I can also have a nano imprint type technique. If I can make a master using these two lithography techniques, I can stamp out some of these patterns to get arrays of this and so on. So a lot of advancement in optical metasurfaces has happened because of advancements in fabrication techniques, and that has been a key enabler basically. That needs to be appreciated, right? So these are all kind of the structures we have fabricated in the IISc clean rooms, which I'm showing here as examples. One can think of metasurfaces made up of 1D arrays of lines, right? These are silicon lines on a quartz substrate, for example. The reason to come up with patterns, dimensions, and all that is to create resonances where fields will be enhanced, right? That is the basic premise. We can also look at arrays like these are more exotic, like amorphous germanium on calcium fluoride or patterns we can make. There are also more advanced structures in the form of like having etched out certain parts of a square, for example. Having dimers of ellipse with a nanodisk coupler is one example. This is something we didn't fabricate in IISc, but through collaborators in Sweden who made these kind of interesting disk arrays. Each of them supports interesting scattering modes that I'm interested in overall scattering both in the vertical direction and in the lateral direction, basically. Right? So broadly, these are it's up to the creativity of the researcher to come up with very interesting structures. But these are few examples of the kind of structures we have looked at, published papers and all that over the years. Okay. Let me skip this. But very briefly, right, if you want to understand how these resonance phenomena work, there are three popular resonance phenomena. Can you move this a little bit away? So we have three popular resonance phenomena. I will not spend too much time, but just very briefly describe. Right? This is a 1D grating structure where light is incident, and then what happens is that certain wavelengths of light are efficiently coupled inside this structure because of the right condition provided by the grating, and the consequence of that is that it becomes a guided mode within the structure. Every periodic length or so, this will radiate outward and interfere with the light which directly got reflected, and that interference effect between the direct reflection and the guided mode which coupled out is what gives rise to these interesting scattering phenomena. This doesn't happen at all frequencies, but only at certain frequencies where this efficient coupling and outcoupling occurs. And that's why you see these kind of sharp resonances from this structure, right? And then the consequence of these sharp resonances is that there's going to be local field enhancement. Why? Because light is spending a lot more time within this structure. Correspondingly, the electric field strengths are increased within this structure. I can think about more exotic designs as well. Like for example, there are these ring kind of structures where there are particular modes which are inaccessible. I make it accessible by using other types of structures, for example. Like you see arrays of rings coupled to bars basically. The bars help in coupling to the ring and that creates interesting resonance phenomenon. This goes by the name of EIT or electromagnetically induced transparency in physics or atomic physics kind of literature. Right? There are also other class of resonances which have come out, which are called as bound states in the continuum. If you at all learn quantum mechanics, you would be familiar with quantum wells. Have you learned quantum mechanics, quantum wells? Quantum wells have discrete states, right, which are supported in them. But these are discrete states which are present in the continuum, right? When I go above the potential barrier of the quantum well, I can still find discrete states which are called as the bound states in the continuum. There are specific conditions which need to be satisfied to support this, right? So then there are resonances which are otherwise inaccessible because they are in the continuum. I cannot access them, but I can make it accessible by creating asymmetries in this structure. So these are few examples. Like if I have two bars, I will create a structure which is not accessible, but I reduce the size of one bar, it makes it accessible, for example. There are two elliptical discs, which are essentially, if they are parallel, they are inaccessible. If I tilt them, they become accessible, and so on. Right? So these are all resonances I can excite in the continuum, which are otherwise inaccessible, but I access them because of the symmetry I introduce in these structures. So broadly, these are some of the resonances which people have been studying, trying to use them for sensing applications as well. So I'll move on to talk about some of our research work. I don't know how I'm doing in time, but maybe another 10 minutes or 10, 15. Okay, so I'll move on to talk about some of our research work which has happened over the last few years, just to give you a glimpse of what is happening in the metasurface field for sensing applications. The first one I'll talk about is fluorescence enhancement. I already mentioned what fluorescence is in my earlier slide. Fluorescence phenomenon is nothing but there is a fluorophore. You excite, right? You take the atoms or the population to an excited state. They come down to a state from where they emit fluorescence, right? So it's a two-step process. One is the absorption, next is the emission process, right? So we can engineer both of them. I can enhance absorption by playing with the metasurface. I can engineer emission also by playing with the metasurface. So these are examples of fluorophores, for example. Psi3 is a fluorophore which is used to stain certain parts of the cell. So then if I excite at a particular wavelength, for example, here like about 500 or 550 nanometer, I can look at strong emission around 580 nanometers from these kind of fluorophores. So then if I can come up with suitable structures, right, which will enhance both absorption and emission, I get a stronger enhancement in the overall fluorescence, basically. That's the idea. The kind of structures we looked at for this are simple silicon nitride gratings, which can be fabricated in a, for example, a silicon clean room. But we designed these structures to support resonances, two resonances, one for the absorption and one for the emission wavelength, right? And then I can also play with the grating dimensions in a way that these resonances don't show up also, which is also seen, right? And then when I look at the field enhancement, what I see out of these structures, I can achieve fairly large field absolute value square. About 45 times enhancement in field is possible from these kind of structures by just playing with the resonance condition. Then when we went ahead and made these kind of structures, this is again done by electron beam lithography in ISC, where we start with a substrate, glass substrate with silicon nitride layer of appropriate thickness. Then we pattern the resist layer and then do the grating, patterning and etching to come up with the silicon nitride structure. Then we did measurements on these. We used a spectrophotometer to measure the spectrum. We designed it for two resonances, one at the absorption, the other at the emission wavelength, and we are able to map out both the absorption and the emission resonances basically. What does it mean for fluorescence enhancement?
It's changing.
Okay, so what does it mean for fluorescence enhancement? What we did was that we coated the sample with the fluorophore. In this case, it's rhodamine. And then when we tried to test it out, what we found is that when you come in exciting both the absorption and the emission resonances, that's when you get the strongest enhancement in the fluorescence signature, right? We got about 10 times enhancement in the fluorescence coming from both these resonances. If I play with only one resonance, I don't get as much enhancement, about 4 to 5 or maybe about 6 times enhancement is what we obtain. But then when you come in exciting at both absorption and the emission frequency, that's when we get the highest enhancement from these kind of structures. Right? We also came up with a model how to explain the kind of fluorescence effect. So we came up with a dipole emitter model. What you see here are these kind of dipoles which are placed here randomly with random phase, because fluorescence is a incoherent process. And then we were able to model how these dipoles couple to the grating and then emit efficiently. And then we compared this with TNT and all that, and we got fairly good agreement, right? When you get both absorption and fluorescence enhanced, that's when we see the highest enhancement. And when you have only one of them enhanced, you don't get as much enhancement, basically. Right? So then moving on, we also looked at other resonances. These are more exotic resonances supported in these 1D structures. What happens is that I can support resonances in these structures which tend to interact with each other as well. Right? So I can come up with resonances. These are in the mid-infrared. I come up with structures which support resonances in a way that I can achieve very high quality factors. The quality factors we report are about 10 power 7, 10 power 8, and so on. The field enhancements we see corresponding to that is about 40 times, as large as 40 times enhancement is also possible in these kind of structures, right? So then what we did with these then there is a whole step about fabricating these structures using e-beam lithography, patterning, etching, and all that. I'll skip that, but then I'll explain to you what we did with these kind of structures. We coated these with, again, PMMA. PMMA is a molecule which has strong IR absorption. We were particularly probing OH absorption in these kind of PMMA molecules. And then what we see here is that we align the resonances of the structure with the absorption features of the polymer. And then we try to figure out how much is the enhancement in the absorption because of the presence of the structures, basically. Right? And then what we found was that there is a fairly strong enhancement, about 290 times enhancement, because of the fact that I have resonances with these structures that in turn enhances the absorption coming out of these structures, basically. Right? So this is one example where these kind of simple 1D gratings, which are carefully designed to support fairly high Q resonances, can be used to enhance IR absorption processes in these kind of platforms. So moving on, the last part of the work, I'll talk about infrared upconversion or frequency conversion. So what we are trying to do here is to convert frequencies from the infrared to the visible range, right? So what you see here is just a spectrum, right? A simple electromagnetic spectrum. And then we compare the IR and the visible. And what we find is that IR has certain light sources, detectors and all that, which are fairly exotic, they are expensive, they are export restricted, all those disadvantages are there. And then if you look at the visible range, there are much better light sources and detectors available. So one of the purpose of what we tried to do was to connect the two wavelength ranges together for frequency conversion type applications, where if I have a spectral signature, an absorption signature or an image, will I be able to convert that image from the infrared to the visible range is a problem we were looking at. The kind of, these are all, I'll skip this in the interest of time, these are all the kind of processes we can study from these kind of structures. But then the structure as it is what we looked at was essentially made up of a thin layer of 2D material. In this case, it's a gallium selenide layer, which is placed in a mirror layer, basically. There are underlying mirror layers, which are acting like reflector. I project image patterns at the infrared wavelength. I convert it to the visible wavelength. Where this will be useful is that if I have an IR image or a sensing signal, I want to detect using a silicon camera, then I'll be able to come up with this kind of a mirror setup, a frequency conversion mirror, which will help me in projecting images and converting them into the visible wave. Right? So then we came up with an algorithm, an inverse design algorithm using particle swarm to design the exact stack which will do the upconversion, and subsequently we went ahead and fabricated these kind of structures. I'll skip some of these details, but more importantly, so this is what the mirror looks like in a microscope. The area what you see here, roughly about 50 by 50 micron, is the area where we project images. All these images, whatever were there, were initially taken in the infrared. This was projected onto the nonlinear mirror stack, and then we convert it and detect it using a silicon sensor. So what you see here are images as captured by the silicon sensor because of the frequency conversion type application. So where this is useful is that if I have infrared signatures, right, it could be in the 2 micron, 3 micron, any of those interesting wavelength range, I'll be able to convert it and detect it using a standard silicon camera. The other interesting thing one can do with this kind of imaging setup is that I can do real-time image processing as well. So this is an application what we looked at. Like if I had a letter C, which is up-converted, then I'll be able to select only the edges, for example, right? I'll be able to do high-pass filtering, select the edges, but just putting suitable components in the optical path without doing any software image processing. So all this is done in the optical hardware to do this kind of image processing type applications. Then if I want to smoothen the image, for example, get rid of all the high frequency content, the sharp edges and all that, then I'll be able to choose the size of the flake. A smaller flake will mean a lot of the high frequency components get rejected. Then I get the smoother version of these letters and all that. So the advantage of doing this in an imaging train is that now I can leverage a lot of the advancements in Fourier optics to clean up the images, to process the images and so on, where a lot of the hardware or a lot of the software and the memory which is required to do this in your computer, no, those can be eliminated. I can do this all with the optical train itself. Okay, that's all I pretty much have for this presentation. I think timing wise I'm doing good. So hopefully I'll try to talk to you about optical sensing techniques. What are the different techniques which are routinely used? And also talked about how to improve the sensitivity and specificity for some of these techniques. And then particularly when we talk about sensitivity, Metasurface is one promising platform which has come up over the years, last 5-10 years, I would say, trying to leverage engineered structures, metal structures, dielectric structures, which enhance optical sensing processes is something of interest. And that's what we have also worked on. What are the current challenges in this field? There's a lot of interest in getting large area metal structures, not just do E-beam lithography, but print it out over large areas like roll printing. All those techniques are coming up to print and get these structures across large areas and then use them to do useful applications as well. I'll stop here and then I'll also thank all the students who did the work. So these are the students who did the work. Almost the work I presented is probably about 3 PhDs work, but a lot of other students contributed to this. I would also like to thank the funding agencies who made this work possible. Right? And thank you for listening to the talk. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you. Yeah, please.
So that was a wonderful session, and I have a small doubt in the IR up conversion when we are converting IR to the visible light. Like while we are changing the wavelength and the amplitude, right? Sorry, wavelength and frequency. There be any change in the amplitude? First question, and how sensitive the camera should be or the detector should be to detect the visible light? Like
good question. Yeah. So, will there be an amplitude change? Definitely there will be an amplitude change because the frequency conversion process has a conversion efficiency, right? Sorry?
It will be increased or decreased?
Invariably, it will be decreased only. There's nothing amplifying it, right? I'm just doing frequency conversion. So, invariably, it will be decreased. How expensive or what effort would you take to detect this? That's another question. Like if it's a low efficiency, then you need a high sensitivity camera to do the detection. If you can push the efficiencies higher, if you can get few % kind of efficiency, right? Then you can use standard silicon cameras, right? Like nowadays CMOS cameras are very popular. I can use a CMOS camera to do detection. If the efficiencies are low, then I need to use like EMCCD or some scientific CMOS or such kind of cameras, right? To do the detection, right? So the efficiency and the amount of effort you put for doing the detection are kind of related to each other.
What could be the resolution if the efficiency will be too low? Like
resolution is limited by, for example, the pixel size or your imaging optics, right? I don't think the resolution will be limited by the efficiency. So they are two separate parameters.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your enlightening knowledge on dielectric metasurfaces in optics. Thank you very much. Now I invite Mr. N. Venkatesh, Secretary, IEEE Hyderabad Section, to present moment of appreciation to Professor Varun Raghunath.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Raghunathan, for a wonderful talk. So our next speaker is from Silicon Labs, Mr. N. Venkatesh. So it is our privilege to welcome Mr. N. Venkatesh, Senior Director of Engineering at Silicon Labs, with extensive experience in semiconductors, wireless technologies, and IoT systems. He has played a key role in developing innovative wireless solutions and industry academia collaborations. Please join me in welcoming Mr. N. Venkatesh for his talk titled Ultra Low Power Wireless MCUs for Printed Sensors. Hello. Thanks very much. Before I start, I just wanted to know how many of you are in the electronics area? Almost everybody. How many of you are in areas other than electronics? Okay. So I maybe what here are many of you are in the computer science area. Okay. All right. So I'm going to see this whole summer school is about sensors, which actually are part of the entire gamut of devices that are powering a more automated world. Everything is getting automated, right? Everything now, your car moves through the the fast tag sensor in the airport. Okay, you just stand and show your face, and you can walk in. So human assessment is getting changed to sensor assessment. And it's not just a sensor, right? So you have sensing, you have to compute, you have to do some analytics, you have to take decisions. So sensors are always paired with microcontrollers, and that is the topic of my talk today. So I come from Silicon Labs, which is the industry leader in low power IoT MCUs. Or these are wireless MCUs. When you say wireless, we talk about a cell phone is wireless. Through 3G, 4G, then you have a Wi-Fi connection which is wireless. Now the difference between the two is that a cell phone you have to purchase the spectrum. A huge amount of money you have to pay so that you have the right to transmit that. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, so many other protocols are license free, so you can transmit as long as you follow certain rules, you can transmit. So Silicon Labs is the leader in devices which support the unlicensed spectrum transmission, which means all of these protocols like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Thread, Zigbee, Z-Wave, Wi-Sun, so many of them. Right, so we have a large office here in Hyderabad, otherwise our headquarters is in Austin. All right, so when you look at what was there for a long time back, we used to do devices like this, and a lot of devices still exist. You send something, then you have an amplifier, you do some filtering, and then you do something with it. Okay, simple devices, okay, which turn on turn on and turn off the water when the tank is full and so on. For ages, okay, we've been doing control applications. Okay, then things became much easier once you had a microcontroller inside, which could actually do things that you would put more versatile form, you could actually go and change it. And if you make a mistake, you can go and change the software and make things work. And a lot of devices became more automated, more easy to use, our washing machines and so many things which came because of the fact that you have sensors, you have actuators, actuators are output devices, sensors are input devices. And then you could actually, write some software or embedded firmware to do things. Okay, and that became a part of the entire world of automation until, the whole concept of the internet came along. Okay, when people became more connected, they could actually work better. You could actually gather data from more sources. You can connect with more people more easily. And the same thing in the world of machines. When machines are networked, they can actually be more efficient. They can actually do more complex stuff. So it's not just that you take a local decision, but you send the data out to a server, which has not only the luxury of taking your data, but it can take data from many sources within your building or even outside the building. Okay, for example, if you want to schedule a washing machine, you can actually check your weather, you can check your power cost of power. In many countries, the cost of power is directly dependent on the demand. Just like your Uber cab, okay, suddenly pricing goes up, then also pricing can go up or go down. So you can actually do a lot more efficient algorithmic stuff if you can actually gather data from more sources. So you take data, send it out, and then manage to actually take a better, more intelligent decision. Okay, and that's what your MCU needs to allow you to do. Take a sensor and send it out. Okay, and then you can do cloud analytics. Now you can also do edge computing. Okay, you need to work on a lot of stuff like the right network protocols so that people can understand what you're sending. There are so many languages in the internet. Okay, different wireless frequencies, different wireless protocols, different network protocols. Okay, if you send data in TCP formatted one, it cannot be received by a piece of software which only handles UDP, for example. So all of these things have to be handled so that you can get data in together. So the microcontroller itself started evolving. Originally did only the compute part. Okay, long time back you had an 8051. Okay, which many of you we still learn because it's fundamentally the building block of the entire world of microcontrollers after that. And before 8051 was the 8085, 8086 microprocessors, which together with other peripherals became a microcontroller. So they evolved when we found that individually a device can't do too much. Even a refrigerator today is connected. If you keep the door open, you can get an alert on your phone saying that you forgot to close the refrigerator. So connected devices became standard. And so every microcontroller needed to have wireless connectivity. And after some time, the fear of hacking, the fear of getting malicious firmware upgrades and doing things it's not supposed to do, people started putting more security in it. And now people are putting more intelligence in it. Because all the algorithms that we used to write earlier, the methodology of writing algorithms is changing. Instead of trying to figure out mathematically, okay, what we should do with the data, what kind of filtering we should do, what kind of thresholds we should apply. Now, okay, you take all the data, throw it, you just classify it saying that this is that. And then you let a machine learning algorithm create out a way in which the next set of data you get, you can actually figure out what to do with it. So the minute you have machine learning, the structure of the computing changes. Okay, you actually have to do a lot of parallel multiply and add operations, matrix operations, vector operations. So microcontrollers started getting enhanced with additional hardware logic, which a microcontroller has an ALU. The ALU has one multiplier, one adder. It can do only one thing at a time. Whereas now you can do hundreds of things at a time by using a matrix multiplier in hardware. Okay, so MCUs are evolved. Okay, so I mean, NVIDIA is famous for the GPUs because they found that if you have a CPU, even if you have 16 cores in your laptop, you have 16 multipliers basically. But if you want to do machine learning, you need thousands of multipliers operating every cycle. So the GPU came, and that's why NVIDIA is so famous. But it's also true for embedded wireless microcontrollers, where at a much smaller scale, you still have to parallelize a lot of operations. Okay, so what's inside the microcontroller. It's also in semiconductor industry, we also call it a SoC or system on chip. Long time back, what was on a big board is now inside a chip, which was actually, for those of us, we have been working in this field for, 30, 35 years. Long time back, if you had to design something, we take individual chips, op amps and counters and AND gates and create a board, a big board. If you had a microcontroller, you have a microcontroller, fine. But then you have to attach it to memory, which is external, which you have to attach it to some, interface, logic, peripherals, all of which is on the board. Eventually, through chip integration, everything came inside and we started calling it system on chip. The entire system came to be on the chip. And that's what is most common today with the MCU and peripherals. Can I use this one? This works?
Mike,
This
you
works?
can use it.
Yeah. All right, this works. On it. Is it on?
No,
Okay.
just a minute. Just hold for 5 seconds again. Talk.
This works, you can hear me, right? Okay, so this system on chip is what is being put into different semiconductor devices today in different forms. Okay, some of them have more memory, less memory, 1 core, 2 cores. Okay, the clock speed can be 250 megahertz, can be 100 megahertz. It all depends on how much you want to spend, how much you have to do. Okay? So you typically have sensors and actuators which are not necessarily on the system on chip. Sometimes you have temperature sensors and some things are getting integrated, but mostly they are not, they are outside. Everything else is inside. Okay, and if you look at one level inside, if you want to look at it, okay. So assume that the sensors, okay, only some of them may be inside, most of them are outside, but inside for sure, inside a chip, you will have a CPU, you will have some SRAM, you will have a flash. It can be multi-die, but it can be still on the same chip. Then you have timers, okay, because a lot of time, devices spend in a sleep mode. And that's the whole fundamental concept of battery save. Keeping the battery alive longer is to sleep as much as possible. If something is not doing, if something is not needed, sleep. Okay. So you have another timer will wake you up when it's time to take the next data from the sensor. And then you also, for transmission of wireless data, you also have a wireless subsystem which actually converts your digital signals after modulation. Okay, and then you modulate it in the digital domain, everything is DSP. After modulating, you do it, take it to a DAC, convert it to analog, then multiply with a RF carrier, and then you send it out to an antenna. Similarly, in the receiver, you have the RF subsystem, then you take it to an ADC, then you do everything in DSP to figure out what your data is demodulated, correct errors in it, and so on. Okay, and so in the whole process, people figured out that battery life is very important, especially in wireless devices. Wireless by definition is untethered. If you connect it up to a power source, then what's the point in being wireless? You can as well be on an internet connection. Right? So in the semiconductor industry, the VLSI industry, they come up with a lot of techniques for reducing power. Okay, and I won't go through all of them, but one of the things is that the smaller the chip is, the less power it consumes, because if you are more efficient in describing your design so that it fits into a smaller set of transistors, okay, then it can be less power hungry. Okay, and then you scale it to different, 40 nanometer, 22 nanometer. Every time you get smaller, the distances the signals have to travel is less. And therefore the losses are less, the capacitances are less, and you end up, wasting less energy. The power density increases, but you waste less energy. Then you know that in CMOS circuits, whenever normally a CMOS is a complementary transistor. If one of them is on, the other is off. So in theory, that doesn't take any current at all. But at the time of switching from one to the other, briefly you get a power surge because you're switching the state, the capacitor which was now earlier discharged, now we are charging it. So it draws some of your current, it draws some of your energy. So, but if you switch less often, you spend less power. So can you really want, say, 1 gigahertz clock for doing something, or can you do with 200 megahertz? If 200 megahertz is enough, you're saving a lot of power. So they call it clock scaling. Sometimes they can turn the clock off completely, which is called clock gating.
And then you can actually turn on portions of your device which you don't need right now. And that's a technique called power islands. And then you can have different power modes. You can go to low power mode, high power mode. In low power mode, you can probably drive a smaller set of signals outside. Maybe if you want to go, they make the LED glow brighter. You need to spend more current into it. Okay, so you can change it based on what you need. And then you can dynamically change your voltage. Okay, the more the voltage power is, if you have the low resistance R, then your power is V square by R. So the power consumption increases with square of voltage. So if you need not work with 3.3 volts, but your transistors can work with 1.8 volts, you are saving a lot of power. So all of these techniques are used, but they are not enough. Okay, you have to do more. Okay, so one of the things that in large semiconductor devices, the problem is that there is something called leakage. Even though in a complementary CMOS circuit, one is on, the other is off. Even so, it is not completely off. There's a small amount of leakage, which when you think about billions of transistors inside a chip, it all adds up. So how can we actually reduce the kind of leakage that we have in from those? And people have worked on that. People have worked on structures which, the reason why a particular transistor does not carry any current here is because the gate is turned off. Okay, that means you're applying a voltage to the gate, which removes the channel between the source and the drain. And you are actually closing, it's like, putting some pressure and then closing a valve so that water doesn't flow through. If the flow of water is high and then you're not putting sufficient pressure to close it, then some water can still leak. Okay, and the same story here. How can you influence the channel so that absolutely no current passes through? When they wanted to make transistors smaller and smaller and smaller, they found that the gate does not have sufficient influence on the channel because it is interacting with the channel in a very small area. So if it's interacting in such a small area, electrons still can push through. You are not doing sufficient suppression of the current. So how can you improve the influence? They started doing these 3D structures where the gate goes up. And then you actually put the channel goes up, and then you put the gate all around it. Okay, when you put it all around it, you can influence the channel more, and therefore you can reduce the leakage current. So devices became from a 2D structure, it is getting to be a 3D structure. Okay, so these are all being done right. And eventually, okay, so when you take a large MCU, no matter what you all do, okay, this is an example of a commercial wireless microcontroller. It's a device from Silicon Labs called the SIWX917. It does Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. It also has a microcontroller ARM Cortex M4 in which you can write an application code, you can read data, and it has a lot of software libraries for doing your network protocols. So you can build a complete IoT device or system using this chip. And it contains a lot of different things. It has a network processor which does network programming, network protocol processing. It has an application processor in which the people can write different applications which are building, for example, a wireless ECG machine, or if they are doing a wearable watch, they can write appropriate software. But if you want to increase the battery life, we know that any given time we do something, we don't do something. Therefore, whatever you don't do can be turned off. If you are reading sensor data every 30 seconds and sending it out to the cloud, so that then you can take a decision whether to regulate the gate or not. Okay, for example, you are simply watering your field. You can keep measuring your soil moisture every few minutes. You don't have to do it every millisecond. It's okay to do every few minutes or maybe every 30 seconds. It's up to you. But in those 30 seconds, you're not doing anything. So can you turn off most of your circuit? Can you come on just when you need? But remember that if you want to count 30 seconds, your counter or timer has to be on. So all your counters become a timer logic, okay, will be on, okay, it's in a different color. So when all of these can be individually turned on or off, depending on the state of your system, you can decide whether to keep one on or off, and then you can progressively change it as your functionality progresses. So fundamentally, the ability to control power at a low level of granularity is the secret to increasing battery life in all devices. And so as an example, let's say that you are transmitting something. Then obviously you have to get your network processor on because you have to do your TCP, IP and everything else, but the receiver can be turned off. Okay. If you are not, if you are reading sensor data, okay, you already read the sensor data, you already filtered it. Now you have made a decision that I want to transfer it. Then you pass the data on. You first, when you are doing the sensor data reading and analysis, you keep your application processor on Cortex running, finish processing. Now you decide whether you want to transmit or not. If you decide not to transmit, no problem. Everything goes back to sleep and comes back again after 30 seconds. If you decide you want to transmit it, fine, pass it on to the other processor which is doing the transmission and shut everything else on. And similarly, when you finish transmitting, you need to get data back to acknowledge whether you received it or not. Then you can do that. You can turn on the receiver and turn off the transmitter. These happen in orders of hundreds of microseconds, so they have to be really, really fast. Okay, but this kind of structure inside is what enables a longer data. Okay, the other option is that you know that your cell phone is asleep, but you are ready to receive a call. Your Wi-Fi connection in your laptop, you're not using your laptop. But if somebody sends you a message, you will reach your laptop. Why is that? So there is a method in Wi-Fi protocol where you can be asleep, but tell the access point of the router that you are going to wake up only after 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever it is that you want. Which means that if some message is coming to your laptop, it will be stored in the access point till the time you wake up and receive it. So there is something called a latency. You may not receive the signal immediately. Let's say that you want to open your door and there is a smart lock there. You're taking your cell phone, you're opening an app, say door open. Now the smart lock on the door has said, low power requirement because you don't want to keep changing the battery every month, just now a year or more. Therefore, it decides to keep, and maybe it will wake up only once, it took 1 second or 2 seconds. So you find that maybe when you say open, it may take 2 seconds for the door to open. Right? So during that time, okay, if you want to do something faster, sometimes when you wake up your laptop, it may have to reconnect the Wi-Fi. If you don't want to reconnect, you can store the parameters of the last connection and then use it directly. Which means that then you have to retain that data, which is in semiconductor terminology, we call it RAM retention. RAM compared to flash, if you turn off the power, the RAM data vanishes. If you want to preserve the RAM data, you have to keep powering it. So you have to decide whether you can take the hit of taking extra time to reconnect, or whether you want to take or the reconnection time to be pretty fast, and therefore you want to spend some energy retaining the RAM. It's up to you, and depending on the application, people do something. So in Wi-Fi, so you actually can sleep for a long time, and as long as you are asleep, you won't necessarily be off the network. People won't see that you are offline really. Okay, although people can be offline, devices are not offline. Your laptop will receive an email even when it is asleep, even when it is in standby mode, if it follows the protocol, Wi-Fi allows it. So which means that every so often it wakes up and checks whether any messages are pending for it or not. And that interval is called a TTM, delivery traffic indication map. Every TTM period it can wake up, check whether there's any message pending for it. If it is, then it can say, okay, I'm awake now, give me the message. Okay, so such protocols are here to make life easier for an embedded wireless system which can transmit and receive data while conserving battery life. So I told you about the fact whether you want latency or whether you want, longer battery life, which is important for you. If you need very quick response, like as soon as I say on, immediately that should happen. Like you want to control a robotic, machinery. Okay, if you want it to move left or right, it has to respond in 10 milliseconds. Then you cannot actually, afford to keep the system on off for a long time. It has to be continuously connected. Continuously, energy will be spent in remaining connected. But if your latency can be higher, is that okay? I want to open the door. I'm pressing the door open signal. It's okay. I can wait for 2 seconds. After 2 seconds, the door opens. I'm fine. Then that means that your latency tolerance is higher, and therefore energy consumption is less. In some cases, you may want the best of both worlds. Even that is possible. For example, okay, if you are sleeping in a class, you're dozing, you're not listening to the professor, right? But if he calls your name, it matches your some keyword, right? Suddenly you wake up. And then the professor can tell you complex stuff you can start understand. The same thing is also available in part of business. Your devices are asleep, but you can send some energy to it, which there's a pattern detector inside it, which will detect it and wake up. Once it wakes up, then you can send some real complex signals to it, just like us. And that is also possibility in wireless systems. Okay, finally, all this on and off thing, as a systems engineer, if you are building a particular device, if you are building a wearable, if you are building an environmental monitoring device, you have to decide how to keep your on and off cycles. Where do you sense? How often do you sense? Do you transmit that sense data immediately? Do you set some threshold and transmit it only if it is an emergency? If it is within a threshold, okay, you have a smoke detector, the smoke detector need not send smoke information if there is no smoke. It has to send it only when there is something which is above threshold. So you can set all of that and try to maximize the time you are in sleep mode versus the time you are active. Alright, there's one more trick which I wanted to talk about, which is also used in microcontrollers. You know that humans, okay, they have something called reflex action. When you touch something hot, immediately you pull away. Okay, but the great thing about this is that it happens so fast that the signals do not go via the neurons to the brain to get processed. Okay, it happens within the spinal cord itself. That means there's a local sensing and response, okay, which makes it very fast, which reduces your amount of latency and avoids having your brain to think too much. So much so that even if you're half asleep, okay, you may not listen to somebody, but if something hot, your hand touches something hot, by reflex action automatically it pulls away. So the same concept is also used in microcontrollers into something that we call as a peripheral reflex system. What if you wanted to have certain responses to certain sensor data, which you already know what the response is supposed to be? So why take it to the microcontroller so that it runs all its firmware logic, it wakes up and does? Can the microcontroller remain asleep, not process anything? Can the peripheral subsystem itself handle certain events? So, and that is what the peripheral reflex system is. And so that you can take data from one and use it for doing something else without CPU intervention. And what is that CPU intervention? I'll give you some examples. Okay, firstly, the benefits of this is the CPU doesn't wake up for a power consumption reduces. The response can be faster. Remember that touching something hot, you need to respond immediately, take your hand off. The same thing here, it will be faster. The software on your microcontroller is simpler because anything that is not on your plate to do makes your life simpler, right? If you don't have to study something, life is simpler. Similarly, the software is simpler In some conditions, you don't have to take care of. They are already taken care of by the hardware. Then you can actually have some low latency applications, touch sensing, motor control, and everything else. And if you have an example, if you want to, turn on an LED with a touch signal, earlier, okay, to turn on or turn off something, you have to turn a switch. Physically, the switch changes state. Okay, today there is no physical switches anymore. If you want to turn on the torchlight of your camera, it's a touch sensor. The touch sensor is sensed. How is it sensed? Through capacitive changes. Where does it go? It goes to the microprocessor. Then the microprocessor sends another signal to turn on the LED light for your torch. Right? Everything goes through the big CPU then. What if you can avoid it? So simple things like turning on an LED and everything can be done without waking up the CPU. And then you can also monitor sensor. If you have an analog sensor, you can keep monitoring it. Only if the threshold is crossed, then only you start doing conversion to digital. Remember that conversion from analog to digital consumes energy. Any kind of processing consumes energy. So conversion of analog to digital also consumes energy. So what if you can do something in the analog domain itself to take immediate action? You can save even more energy. Okay, a lot of such touch sensing, sensor monitoring happens there. Then you can do a motor control. If there is a emergency, you can immediately control the output, the speed of a motor in case there is you are seeing an obstruction. If you have an autonomous vehicle, can it stop immediately as soon as it finds an obstruction without taking it through the GPU and everything else? Because autonomous vehicles do a lot of visual processing. But sometimes again, it's not so complex. If somebody is there, you find that someone is there within 2 feet, you can stop immediately. So you can do it to the peripheral reflex system. And then you can do event counting. Let's say that I want to turn on the lights of AC only when 10 people are inside the room. So you can keep counting the number of people walking into the room and then turn on the AC. So that you don't need, for event counting, you don't need a heavy duty processor. You can do it at the peripheral system itself. All right, so I want to talk to you about the structure of the MCU and all the different ways in which we can save energy and increase battery life. Okay, so I gave a few examples. These are not complete, but these hopefully will not trigger your interest, and you can also think of ways in which you can save energy in a complete system. So, any questions?
That would be interesting segment. And I have a small doubt in the SOC. While everyone is saying we are using the FinFET and other bits in the industries for the SOCs, and we go beyond like less than 19 to 28 nanometers, then it will be quantum tunneling takes place, and there will be a loss. So how can it be the every year size is reducing to 2 nanometers to 3 nanometers something? Because beyond 19 nanometers, the quantum tunneling effect takes place. So,
well, yeah, I mean, right now, okay, I mean, people are already at 3 nanometer or 2 nanometer technology. But you're absolutely right that again, there is a limit on how small you can go. Okay, before other things take over. So people have to look at alternative ways in which they can use data. And using quantum qubits is one such way in which maybe you can do a lot more processing without necessarily having to become very dense. But you're right, Moore's law died a few years ago. Okay, I mean, it is no longer doubling the way it was doubling. There is a limit, and power consumption, power dissipation is another problem. A lot of heavy duty processors today, unfortunately, cannot dissipate or take away the heat enough. So they have something called dark silicon. Necessarily, if you want to use this, you have to turn off that. Such rationing is also happening today. Okay, we are also reaching a limit in terms of the power that we can process. So in many cases, okay, many ways we are reaching some limits, physical atomic limits we are reaching. So people are trying to do other things like quantum computing and so on. So let's see what happens.
Any other question?
All right. You can I mean, there was my email nvenkatesh@50.org.
Can you please?
You
Can you just put on this one?
just last slide actually.
Yeah, just the last slide.
If you do right, I will respond. I don't miss any responses. If you have anything you want to ask, anything you want to know more about, feel free. Otherwise, I hope you got the benefit out of coming here and listening to a few people. Okay, I mean, every time you listen to someone, if you can take away just 2 or 3 points from that talk, that itself is enough. You cannot remember everything, but 3 key things that you remember from it, write it down. Okay, and then that will all help add up. And I mean, in the competitive world, students who know a little bit more, stay ahead. So be a little bit better than all the others who did not take the initiative and come to the Census Council winter school. Okay, all the best.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful presentation. So I now request Professor Sanket Goyal to please give momentum to Mr. Venkatesh.
First of all, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You can also go.
Come.
resume. These questions ఉంటాయి రీజన్ ఉంటుంది అది ఓపెన్ చేసి స్లైడ్స్ మనకి
Now I would request Brother Ponaravi to please give momentum. So Professor Goyal's talk will be more of a classroom come lab discussion, your hands-on session.
ఓపెన్ చేయాలి వాళ్ళు అడిగినప్పుడు
So we'll be briefing about the lab. This discussion come presentation will be held after the lunch. During the lab. So ma'am, please present the momentum to Professor Goyal.
Yeah. I can add extra line my CV.
Thank you so much everyone for your attendance. And shall we get for lunch? So I would like to request Professor Goyal to speak at least a few words before we close and wait for the lunch. Sanket sir, a few words.
Two words. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So I know that you were supposed to give a talk, and you should be happy that I'm not, because nobody likes talks more than hands-on sessions. And of course, the talks which we had in the morning, they were very, very hands-on, and some things were covering what we have done in the lab. So what we'll do, we'll wait for the lunch now. And there is a room near to the lab, J220. So what we do is we'll have a small 15-20 minute session going forward. We start the hands-on session. So I request all of you to finish the lunch by 1:45 possible, so that we can start the hands-on session at 1:45 itself, and then we carry on by splitting it. So yeah, we'll do that. Let's start from the lunch, and we'll hopefully we can resume our session at 1:45. I think all the speakers, Venkatesh, and the speakers will help you this morning, and we'll see a glimpse of the hands-on of what they have covered this morning in today's afternoon. Thank you so much. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you so much.
Just for a few minutes, we will give the momentum opposition to our first session chat. Mr. Arindam and Dr. Usha Kane. Just a minute. Arindam first.
Ma'am.
The bag is so, but it's
So can they proceed for lunch?
yeah.
Kindly proceed for lunch. We'll reconvene sharp at 1:45 as Professor Goyal has asked for. So please proceed for lunch.
మధ్యాహ్నం అక్కడ అది ఉంది కదా
Kindly take the bags with you. The room may get locked.
దీన్ని లాక్ చేయాలి.
బాగా